Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. In fact, I've decided I'm going to do this a little bit differently and do it as a live stream. So for those of you that are watching this when it's live, welcome, welcome. For those of you that joined while it's live but not on time, you can rewind. You're probably not going to hear this, but you can rewind and you can even adjust the speed so that you maybe catch up to the live stream. And for those of you that are watching afterwards, that is cool too. Grab yourself a drink. It's time to kick back and break down some of the changes that are coming with the Legacy of Phrecia event. Now, this is a rerun. The original Legacy of Phrecia event was run during patch 3.25 in the long downtime that took place there before 3.26 came out. And during that period, Legacy of Phrecia was put in as a bit of a filler. It ended up being a really cool event, but it also had a few little problems with it. Not necessarily problems that everyone disliked, but problems that meant that it wasn't a smashing success, and it ended up being one of GGG's less popular events. However, I do think they've fixed a lot of those problems. Legacy of Phrecia, a very quick overview. This is condensing previous videos I've done down into a smaller period of time, but if this is the first time you've seen this, there might be enough for you to follow everything. Legacy of Phrecia answers two what-ifs. What if we didn't have the normal 19 ascendancies? What if we had something else? And additionally, what if we had no Atlas tree, but instead we had something that I at least see as being loosely based upon the dual system, but other people sort of see it differently. Some people see it as an extension of the old Watchstone system from 3.13 through 3.17. And 3.13 through 3.16 would be correct. And other people see it as being Atlas duels. Whichever way you see it though, Legacy of Phrecia allows you to specialize in particular areas of content more than you can in the base game. So that is the core identity of what Legacy of Phrecia is. And we're going to go through all of the changes. For those of you that are curious, I'm currently only on YouTube. This is a bit of an experiment. I might actually go and put the VOD of this on Twitch later. That's my basic thoughts, and then I'll answer questions over there as well. But I wanted to go through all of the details that Grinding Gear Games put out today. This information came out 40 minutes ago, and it is a very surprisingly high power patch, in my opinion. I was expecting this to be Grinding Gear Games going, okay, you know what, base game champion is a fine ascendancy. It can beat everything in the game. It's not S tier, but it is very solid. So let's try to get everything close to the champion in power level. Some things will be better, some things will be worse. Instead, what I think they're going for here, and I don't think they're going to exactly hit this, but I think their goal philosophy is push everything towards the power level of the Elementalist. So this means the Ancestral Commander has a notable nerf. We'll get to that because Ancestral Commander was the best of the ascendancies. Behemoth has been changed substantially and should make it something that's viable in solo play, which it was not previously, except as a joke. But everything here has a reason to consider playing it. A bunch of things are stronger than they used to be. I agree, people in chat are saying they like the champion. The champion is fine. There is nothing wrong with the champion. It's just not one of the strongest ascendancies in the game. Most people that feel a pull to play the champion end up going, you know what, maybe it would be better if I just played a Slayer instead. Maybe that would be stronger. And maybe it would be better to play as one of the other ascendancies, depending on the exact build that you're playing. So let's just go through some of the things. I have noticed that the number of people watching this has gone up substantially in the last minute or two. So if you're in that category, feel free to rewind. That's one of the advantages to me doing this on YouTube. Rewind, jump to 175% speed until you catch up, and then you'll be able to follow everything. Now, let's go through, starting with the Ranger Daughter of Oshabi. The Daughter of Oshabi is one that was had a fair bit of hype, the original Legacy of Phrecia, but kind of got outscaled by other things. It's pretty strong. The original Daughter of Oshabi, though, had a couple of nodes that were seen as not all that hot. So there's some cool things in here, but a lot of things just didn't quite get there. Now, bringing this back to the actual changes that we've got here. Firstly, spell slinging is now separate from illuminating wisps. This one is important because spell slinging does something cool, but it has no synergy. It's a 4-pointer. It has no synergy with the 2-pointer behind it. That's now being fixed, so you can now play just a spell slinger that doesn't have anything to do with using the Sacred Wisp support, which is a big improvement because Sacred Wisp support doesn't do very much for builds that want spell slinging. So that is actually a very substantial buff, but that's a buff to something that wasn't previously, I don't want to call it not previously viable, but it wasn't previously popular. So that's something that's, definitely changing there. Next up, we have Oath of the Magi. Now, this is something that came out of Path of Exile's 3.23 expansion. 3.23 allowed you to have 2 ascendancies simultaneously, and one of the ones that you could take was the Oath of the Magi, or one of the notables that you could take in one of them was Oath of the Magi, and it was a cool effect, so they brought it back here. Defenses from equipped body armor are doubled if it has no socketed gems. That is like a huge cost, having no socketed gems, so if you're willing to pay that price, well, there's a big payoff, but it's a price, it's a real price. And generally speaking, that was niche. There are better ways to double the equipped body armor defenses that you're getting, like the armor and energy shield mastery that will give you, that will double the amount of armor and energy shield only. It doesn't work for evasion, but it works for the other ones. Doubles the amount of those that come from your armor. That tends to be better. Now, the old version was 60% increased tri-res if you have an equipped helmet with no socketed gems. Resists are a boring stat. You've got to get them somewhere. 180% of them is a lot. That's getting buffed to 240% total. Now, this is something that you can use in 2 different ways. You can either use this to just obliterate gear requirements on your gear, or you can use it to stack resistances for various things. Like, for instance, I'll mention the Surfcaster, even though you can't be a Surfcaster. Surfcaster has that thing that causes your overcapped, I think it's your overcapped cold resistance is added as extra evasion rating. So if you've got 300% cold resist, the 225% that's wasted because of the 75% cap, that becomes a global 225% increase to evasion rating on your character. So there are a few things that you can get that effect on gear. The problem is that those effects are generally, they're pretty high opportunity cost. It's not that they're terrible, but they're hard to get. And then you're also adding in 2 points into this, and you're paying a high price for it. Ultimately, this is something that I think is getting a buff, but it's probably not enough. Over the Magi, that doesn't compel me to take this node. It's a nice bonus if you're taking it and you're already going for an empty helmet, but that's a big cost. Likewise, the life section is going from 30% increase to 40%. That's a pretty big deal. But for those of you that have been playing POE 2 lately and not POE 1, just a reminder that in POE 2, 30% or 40% increased life it's not quite more life, but it's pretty close because the amount of increased life modifiers you've got is small. Here, this is part of Exile 1. It's not going to be a huge amount. For most builds, this getting 40% increased maximum life, it's going to be like 21, 22% more life if you're not a life stacker. And if, that's incorrect. It's going to be like 40% increased is going from 300% base to 340%. It's going to be like 13% more, which is a bit marginal, like when you've got to jump through extra hoops for it. It's not just 2 ascendancy points, it's 2 ascendancy points and extra hoops. And then, of course, you do have the really good movement speed boost, though. 30% movement speed is worth 2 ascendancy points on its own. And if you're pathing through to forest tracking, then, there's something there. This is an improvement, but I feel like this is improving a C tier notable up to a B tier notable. And so it's not going to be huge impact. It's a bonus, but it's not huge. Forest tracking, though, is getting a big buff. 3% increased attack damage per 450 evasion rating previously was 2%. That is really substantial. That is a stat that you can get on a terrible weapon. What is it? It's OG Dreamfeather. OG Dreamfeather has that. And this is something that gives it quite a boost. This is, if you are playing the exact right build for this, this is 50% more DPS. You are probably not playing that exact build because this is probably not enough to make it good, but at the very least, this is a new option. If you were going to go along these lines, you'd need to really aggressively scale your evasion rating, which I think you can get evasion rating into the 250,000 range with a lot of effort. And so that's going to end up being, instead of getting, if it is a 250,000, instead of being 250,000, I'd say 250%, wait, I'm doing the maths on that wrong. No, that's completely wrong. Instead of being 900% increased damage, it's 1,350. So that's what I mean by 50% more multiplier almost to damage. It's not quite truly more because you've probably got some incidental increases elsewhere. I don't think it's going to get there, but at the very least, it's a bit more worth exploring there. Also on top of this, we have Woodland Shrines and Innate Blessing. These are kind of cool. Woodland Shrines creates lesser shrines when you kill an enemy, and it's also going to have 50% increased effective shrines. And then Innate Blessing is just getting better as well. I believe from memory, I've got to actually confirm this. I believe you can get more than one shrine active at a time. I just want to confirm how exactly that works on this. That's one that's important because the base duration of each buff is 10 seconds. Increasing the buff duration will allow you to gain multiple simultaneously. So this is something that's something that's kind of silly there. Now, worth noting, Divine Shrine's very rare. Divine Shrines are the ones that make you completely immortal. Gloom Shrines are very, very fun when you get them. They're not god tier, but they are very strong. Then after that, you have Brutal, Charged, and Echoing Shrines. Echoing Shrines are annoying. They mess up a lot of your movement skills because they'll cause them to duplicate. Charged Shrine is very strong. Brutal Shrine is strong as well. Acceleration is the best shrine. Diamond Shrine is very powerful. Replenishing and Skeletal Shrines are just kind of okay. And then you have the ones that just do plain out damage. So, or in the case of Resistance and Shrouded are defensively nice. The key thing to note here is that Acceleration Shrine is not that common. Gloom Shrine is very, very rare, and Charged Shrine, the other really powerful one. Diamond Shrine, you're going to have these only a small percentage of the time. So keep that in mind if you're thinking of building around it. Once more, I have noticed this being a live stream that there's people creeping in all the time. If you are one of the 48 people that have joined in the last 2 minutes or the 80 people that have joined in the last 4 minutes, feel free to rewind the stream to the start and jump up to 175% speed. That's something I always recommend doing on live streams in order to catch up, especially because you've joined near the start of it. And once more, apologies for those of you watching this after the fact. Anyways, Daughter of Oshabi. It's getting some buffs. I don't think those buffs are transformative. I don't think they're fantastic, but they are meaningful. And if you like the Ascendancy, these are going to make it more compelling to play. But we're going to get to the Whisperer in a sec. And the Whisperer was one of the breakouts last time. And I was expecting the Whisperer to get nerfed real hard here. I was expecting to look through the Whisperer and go, ouch, ouch, double ouch, triple ouch. And that's not what it is. The Whisperer is getting two major changes made to it that I think are important to keep in mind. The first one is that your damage is actually going up. And this was this was actually the highest damage of all of the Ascendancies last time. But at the same time, the mana sustain is getting tighter on this. And whilst I think people found ways to make the Whisperer work in the past and just to make mana sustain trivial, I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. Very important warning. I want you to keep this in mind if you're thinking of using Indigon in the Legacy of Phrecia event. This is going to be an inflation league event. There's going to be one of those events where there's going to be really, really, really high prices on things because drop rates are going to feel higher than they normally are. They're not necessarily going to be higher for every individual player, but for those that are doing top-end farming, drop rates are going to be at levels that potentially haven't been seen since, well, have only been seen in the original Legacy of Phrecia event, although those will have been higher. What that means is the rich players are going to have a lot more currency to throw around, and they're going to be able to buy up all the Indigons, they're going to be able to double corrupt them, they're going to be able to then sell some of the ones that fail, potentially, but even then, they're destroying so many of them that they're going to be more expensive. At the same time, people are going to feel compelled not to run side content. Kind of seeing this dynamic in Path of Exile 2 at the moment, where I think an Arbiter of Ash set, I haven't been paying attention, but I think they were up to 15 Divines last time I looked, and that's kind of the equivalent of what it would be like if in Path of Exile 1, your Uber Elder sets got up to 15 Divines. It's not that it's any harder to farm an Arbiter set than it used to be. It's that the people who are wanting to buy them have so much more currency to throw at that they end up just being really crazy. So that's going on with that's going on in general. You just be aware that Indigon could be very, very expensive. Going through the Whisperer, I've had a couple of questions about the Behemoth. I think Behemoth's got some big changes, but we'll come to that once we get there. The Whisperer has this cool thematic thing where all of the text is in lowercase just to simulate whispering. So don't panic yet. Breathe deep. I don't actually know if you guys can hear that, but that's me just whispering a couple of the names of these. So, the key changes that we're seeing on the Whisperer. Firstly, we know all. 100% increased mana cost of skills, previously 50%. So this means that the amount of drain to your mana is going up by a third. Additionally, this is not the only change that's happening to mana sustain here, so keep that in mind. However, attack skills have added lightning damage equal to 6% of maximum mana, previously 4%. So that means that you're getting a buff as well. Essentially, we know all, which I think was already quite good. This is the thing that sort of simulates Mind of the Council, the unique item, but doesn't require you to use that particular unique helmet. This is now allowing you to get that effect more intensely. So it's actually less efficient than it used to be, but I do think it's probably better than it used to be, but it does put you under more pressure. So those are the things that I think are important to keep in mind as we look through this. Don't Panic Yet is getting a buff. It's gaining 20% of damage recouped as mana. This is on top of 100% of physical damage being taken from Mana Before Life. Physical damage being taken from Mana Before Life is an inherently strong but unreliable effect, and it's going to be better sometimes, worse sometimes. You won't necessarily understand why you die, like why you go from, oh, I'm feeling so tanky all the time, to then suddenly going, oh, splat. If you do find yourself playing a Whisperer and you go splat to something and you're thinking, that shouldn't have done so much damage, chances are it's just not doing very much physical damage, it's doing other things. To give you a bit of an example, this is something that does absolutely nothing when it comes to surviving the Uber Maven's or even the regular Maven's memory game, which is something that only meme tank builds can survive. But you can, because that's all elemental damage. It doesn't look like elemental damage. It looks like it might be physical, but it's elemental. At the same time, there's a whole lot of things that do heavy physical damage. So you can end up in this spot where the Uber Shaper can slam you and your life doesn't move at all. Your mana pool goes down a bunch, but your life pool doesn't go down. And then next, the Uber Shaper can fire a single ball projectile at you, or you just get clipped by the beam. And you might end up dying because you're not tanky against the right types of damage. So that's the sort of thing that can come up with Don't Panic Yet. Anyways, Don't Panic Yet is getting better than it was. Recoup of mana is important on these sorts of effects because it does mean that you're going to get less likely to get ruined by certain things. And you may or may not take this in certain situations. It's not something that... It's just one of those things that is not necessarily a... it's probably, well, I mean, it's better than it used to be, but you may or may not want to take it. Breathe Deep is the next one. This is the one that modifies your mana flasks, and it's losing 50% increased recovery, but it is gaining some other effects on it. Breathe Deep is looking like it's stronger now, but not always stronger. And then on top of that, we have You Cannot Be Blinded instead of 100% increased stealth. And stealth is one of those mechanics players don't care about. It's kind of cool sometimes, but usually not. So just being immune to blind, that is equivalent to, I think it's 20% more evasion rating in certain circumstances, and also prevents you from needing to overcap accuracy, or from getting any benefit for overcapping accuracy. All in all, these are actually minimal changes to this ascendancy. The We Know All is better. The rest of it is mostly unchanged because the rest of the ascendancy is where you would tend to spend your points. So Whisperer, I'm going to say this is mostly a wash because the nodes that are changed mostly are the ones that don't matter. But We Know All does have different feelings now. It's not the same thing it used to be. A couple of people have asking for a quick overview of Ancestral Commander. Ancestral Commander unconditionally nerfed, but it is still very playable. And Surfcaster is more give and take. Surfcaster with a fishing rod is better. Surfcaster without a fishing rod is worse, but the changes are not very substantial. So both of those are pretty minor. Next up, we have the Wildspeaker. Wildspeaker was not very popular last time, but probably could have been. It's one of those things where I think this just got a bit outclassed by other choices, and it's fine. And you can see where some of the effects that have been used here have influenced things that they've done elsewhere in the game, which I think was one of the core goals that they had with Legacy of Phrecia originally, was like, oh, We want this effect for a Bloodline Ascendancy in the future. Well, let's just make it for Phrecia and then use it in that Bloodline later. Or we want this effect in PoE 2. How does it feel? And then it's like, okay, well, we'll test it in a minor PoE 1 event, see if it ends up breaking things, see if it's fun or not. Anyways, actually a very good point has been made by Kapozin in chat there. It's a massive buff to Whisperer is not actually anything in these patch notes. It's the fact that Kinetic Blast of Clustering exists now. And also, I think Kinetic Blast of Clustering actually may have existed last Phrecia, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But the Rune Graft that makes that skill good, exists now. So it's kind of, that makes me think that Whisperer could actually be the build of the league. Whisperer with K-Bok and mana stacking, there's so much there for it. So Wildspeaker is picking up a bunch of really minor buffs. It's going from, all the aspect skills are going from 30 to 35. We don't know what that means in practice. Generally speaking though, 30 to 35 on skills that don't deal damage, that are utility, doesn't tend to be all that substantial. Primal Instinct is having less of an effect on how much it nerfs your suppression, but the reason for that is that suppression has gotten worse. So Primal Instinct is actually worse than it was back in patch 325 or 326 because suppression has been nerfed. This is giving you 100% suppression, but you're only suppressing 30% of damage, whereas this version was 100% suppression chance, but only 35% suppression. This would be better if it wasn't an effect that was on the right side of the tree. Primal Instinct would be really good if you could pick it up on every left side build would take this if it could. But you're on the right side, so you're already close to suppression. Yeah, take it if you want it. It's not amazing, it's just fine. But now it's going to guarantee 30% less spell damage, but you can't gain any benefit from suppression. And whether that's worth it or not is up to you. Or alternately, you could use it in conjunction with Acrobatics. Then you need to spec 50% suppression, and then you're looking at 75% avoidance of 75% avoidance of spell damage. But then when those spells do come through, they're dealing full damage to you, and so certain boss things will just one-shot you in that point, and also some awful combinations on rare monsters might as well. So that's going to be up to you there. Otherwise, Great Wolf's Call has a 50% effect of Tailwind on you. Now, this is really substantial. This is in addition to you and nearby enemies have Tailwind, so you're basically getting 12% of action speed as well. This is a fantastic two-pointer now. This is going from a solid two-pointer to a spectacular two-pointer, and really, really good. Boon of the First Ones is just fun. It's a lot worse than Headhunter. So don't look at this as, here's my budget Headhunter. This is your budget inspired learning. And that jewel is still quite good, but there's a big difference between a 4-point ascendancy node, even one behind a good 2-pointer, and just a jewel. And it's not like inspired learning is tearing up the game meta at the moment. Definitely fun. And honestly, if you're thinking of going 1 to 90, I generally don't advise doing this. I advise people play the event if you think you're going to have fun in the whole event. Don't just go 1 to 90 for the mystery boxes. But if you are going to not listen to me and play 1 to 90 just for the mystery boxes, this might be a fun way to do it. Although Surfcaster will be stronger. Otherwise, though, Scourge of the Wilds is one of my favorite things. Like, Spiritual Aid at 150% effectiveness, this can really transform the way you gear a character. So I really like this cluster of this tree, but then you've got to find something else that's good, and that could be from a bloodline, or it could be the suppression notable, or anything else. I do feel like the Wildspeaker gains a lot just from bloodlines existing and some of them being good, because then you're not so tied into this area. And that's actually a good question. Someone's asking, when something says it, Scourge of the Wilds now has plus 100 to dexterity, I just assume that that's on top of what it does. So I'm Not Your Batman in chat is asking, does the precise wording that's given here mean Scourge of the Wilds now has plus 100 to dexterity? Does that replace all the existing text? My reading of this is that this is supplemental. So you're getting 100 dexterity, which solves a lot of problems with gearing. You're getting minions deal 20% extra damage, and then that becomes transformed to 30% personal damage to you. Now, that's only increased damage, but all that is really good. So yeah, I do think there is a really good 6-point cluster here, or at least 4 really good points. Like, great. You've got Great Wolf's Call is unconditionally great. Scourge of the Wilds, unconditionally great. Boon of the First Ones is unconditionally fun, without necessarily being all that strong. Then you've got to decide, what else am I going? Am I going with Pack Mentality? That's an option. It's fine. It may or may not help you build very well. Am I going for an Aspect? The now level 35s with no reservation? Or am I going to try and do something else? Ultimately, maybe you go with a Bloodline. Maybe that's the way you build a Wildspeaker. So those are my thoughts there. Next up we have... what's the next Ascendancies down? Oh, it's the Marauder. Okay, cool. At this point, I wouldn't mind... we'll get to... When we get to the Ancestral Commander, we'll go through them in order. But when we get to the Ancestral Commander, if someone feels like putting a comment down in chat below, that would be something that's useful for people who are looking to find where the Ancestral Commander section is, because it's going to be the one that gets asked the most. So, you can go, 28 minutes or whatever into the stream. We can then do that. It's kind of hard for me to do that while I'm streaming. That's the thing. Antiquarian is first. Antiquarian is weird. Antiquarian is ward themed. Antiquarian is also kind of collector of weird and wonderful items themed, which is a very oddball ascendancy. Now, this has some absolutely crushing drawbacks on it. And firstly, you have no intelligence. That sounds like, me big Conan barbarian, me not very smart. But it's actually really serious, because having no intelligence means you cannot equip any gems that have an intelligence requirement. They don't have to be blue gems. A lot of heralds have a strength requirement and an intelligence requirement simultaneously. A lot of auras have hybrid requirements like that. So it ends up really locking you out of a lot of things. And whilst you do get some cool stuff here, so Whale-Tooth Bangles, 1% increased unconditional duration per 10 strength is amazing. That's a very hard stat to get, and you just get a monstrous amount of it. That comes at the expense of not being able to use it in conjunction with a lot of cool things. So that's the way the Antiquarian was. Broadly speaking, most people who played the Antiquarian in the past did something a little bit unusual. What they would do is they would take, we'll go Calgarian Armor, 377. We'll go Starlight Reflector. We'll go Runic Tablet. And then we'll take Small Node. And that was the strategy that people used in order to get the most out of this ascendancy in the past. Anyway, let's have a look at the changes. Runic Tablet. Gain adrenaline for 20 seconds when ward breaks. Note that you cannot gain adrenaline when you already have adrenaline. So this means that your adrenaline uptime is longer than it used to be. In fact, this is really just taking adrenaline uptime from maybe 85% to 92% or something like that. You should have adrenaline almost all the time with this, but it will fall off. The thing is that the periods when it fall off, you will have some periods where your adrenaline is down and your ward is down. And so you can't regain it until you take another hit from an enemy. So you'll need to have that in mind. But the uptime on adrenaline will be really high. Adrenaline's a very powerful buff. In fact, I should probably bring up exactly what adrenaline is, because it's one of those things I always forget some of the things on this. So I think it's 100%, what is it? It's 100% increased damage. I knew that. 25% increased attack, cast, and move speed. So that's crazy. That's like Onslaught and more. And it stacks with Onslaught. And 10% PDR on top. So very, very strong effect. Very long duration. Very worth an ascendancy point. But it is not always going to be up. And you must use ward. Now, this is a 4-pointer. It's behind another ward effect. So you're definitely using it in conjunction with ward. Because Calgarian Armor has the Yinda's stand effect, 50% of armor and evasion rating from equipped body armor. Now, the other changes that we've got here, Goliath Knuckle is now doubling down. You get more strength, but the drawback just kills that. That is really, I think it's pretty much unusable. Like, people might dispute that, but I feel like Goliath Knuckle, because the drawback is so severe, just going to 200 strength is not going to make it usable. And unfortunately, Turtle Shell, which is the one that has which is the one that's designed for Cast on Stunned, doesn't work with Cast on Stun, because all Turtle Shell is basically doing now is just making you immune to stun and giving you a bit of a Blood Notch Immutable Force setup, but Blood Notch Immutable Force, but you can't use Cast when Stunned support, so who really cares? And Wildtooth Bangle is down there just also being sort of unable to really work well because the drawback of the node that leads in there is so bad. Then we have the other side. Lionized Shield is actually pretty strong. That's a 4-pointer though. So Lionized Hair, your hits cannot be evaded is a very real upside. 50% reduced dexterity is manageable but not crushing. This is a real drawback, but it's not absolutely crushing. There are ways to avoid this being a problem. Then after that, Lionized Shield is getting buffed. So it's still keeping 100% physical damage taken from projectile attacks reduction. That's minus 100. That's absolute minus 100. Gain 50% chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value is being boosted up to 60%. So the payoff is higher. 50% reduced dexterity is pain, but it is manageable. And it's going to mean essentially, as long as you're not running Grace, as long as you're not running Awaken Swift Affliction or any of those sorts of really, really high dexterity requirement effects, you can probably get by. You probably are locked into either using Strength Armor or Strength Dex. You can do Strength Dex, but you can't do pure Dexterity Armor, which is fine. You're probably not that interested in it. So Lionized Hair is a manageable drawback, whereas Goliath Knuckle is a crushing one. And I think everything that is in the bottom right section is dead because of Goliath Knuckle being so bad. Lionized Hair, though, is fine, and Lionized Shield getting buffed is fine. Now, Crystallized Omniscience has come up as a question from Ice Hat Games in chat. Crystallized Omniscience has a, shall we say, rather negative interaction with Goliath Knuckle. You have no intelligence becomes transformed to you have no omniscience. And this dominates even the plus 200 omniscience that you're getting, so it ends up just completely obliterating it. So, essentially, Southeast Corner is bad. Now, someone has mentioned the option of using the Cardiro Timeless Jewel as a way to try and circumvent the intelligence, you have 0 intelligence option. Yes, you can do that in theory. I've not found any ways where the payoff was worth it. I have not found a single way where you can use... so it's Supreme Ostentation is the name of the notable. It's Timeless Jewel exclusive notable on jewels that mention the name Cardiro on them. And the text on it is, you gain no intrinsic benefits from attributes. So no life based upon strength, no energy shield based on intelligence, none of that sort of good stuff. But in exchange for that, you can equip gems and equipment without needing to meet their attribute requirements. So you can circumvent the drawback on Goliath Knuckle if you're really, really determined to. And then you could use it in conjunction with Actum, I think it is. But by doing so, you kind of lose a lot of the benefit of the 200 strength. So you could force it, though. You could force it, Cardiro, Goliath Knuckle, Wildtooth Bangle, and get a bunch of duration out of that. There might be a build in there. I haven't seen this one. I have not seen this one work. And someone thinks it might be Caspero. I'd have to check that. Double check. Don't assume I'm right on that Timeless Jewel. So anyways, Antiquarian. What are we looking at here? Antiquarian was one of the less played ascendancies last time, but it did have a niche. Has it got better? Has it got worse within that niche? No, it's not changed within that niche. The Adrenaline node you still take, but it's not really appreciably better. I guess it is technically slightly better, but not by very much. You're taking the entire ascendancy because of Kelgurran Armor and Starlight Reflector, and those are better. The thing that has gotten better, though, is that the Olroth Bloodline has been added to the game, and it might give you better choices than taking 2 more small nodes here for your 4th node. And is it a good comment that's come up at the moment? Dialer's Malefaction Falborn is something that might actually be a solution here. So let's just go into the Falborn uniques again. Falborn uniques definitely on my list of recently viewed things. And so it is Diala's Malefaction. Ignore attribute requirements of gems socketed in blue sockets. That can definitely solve some of the worst of the problems. That allows you to use Grace. You wouldn't use Grace with Diala's. That allows you to use if there's only one gem you want that's blue. If there's only one thing you want that's blue, you can do that. But note that that's only blue sockets that are on your 6-link. So it's not going to address a lot of the other problems. Another very good point has come up from Shotjia, which is Yinda's Stand. This item is going to be potentially Svalin / Progenesis level prices. So this is the item that has incredible stacking with the Antiquarian. It has gain ward equal to, it says 50%, it's 60% because you're going to catalyze. If you can afford this, you can afford catalyst. So gain ward equal to 6, instead of 60% of armor and evasion rating from your equipped body armor. This stacks with what you get on the Antiquarian, so you can get a tremendous amount of ward from your chest piece. You can then transform that into ward from this, and then you can use Night Grip in order to transform that over into added chaos damage. So there is a lot that you can do here if you want to set yourself up with a ward-based character that is dealing chaos damage with hits. There is a very strong setup that will do that. However, Yinda's Stand, the way that this item is sourced is by meeting your quotas in King's March. In 3.25, that was easy to do at low level, and as a result, you could do it with only a small amount of farmers. Nowadays, it's an oppressively high amount to get of stuff you need to send off to King's March for one attempt at this. This is actually going to probably replace the Mirror Shard Hunt as the primary thing out of King's March. All this is pending some of the other changes that happened to the Atlas idols, so maybe this is going to end up being wrong, but I think Yinda's Stand might replace Mirror Shards as the chase item people are looking for in King's March during this event, and Yinda's Stand, do not count on getting this. Unless you're the sort of person that knows how to make a lot of currency, don't count on getting this item. It could be 250 divines, not just week 1, but week 2 as well. So yeah, let's go through that as something that's really rough. Our quotas will probably replace 50 million or 17 million shipments or any of the other sorts of strategies that have come up as the thing you will chase in King's March. Because Yinda's Stand will be so valuable because it's so rare and because it's going to be so in demand that it may end up being, just the decisive thing there. So the other question though, and we don't unfortunately have any information on this. Today we got the information on the character power changes and the map mod changes, but we do not have any information about what is happening with respect to idol changes. We don't know what the Settlers idols are going to be, and those Settlers idols could end up being something where they allow you to circumvent. I don't know. There's nothing on the Atlas passive tree that allows you to get Yinda's Stand, but there were a couple of things that I think weren't that may be slightly different to what's on the passive tree. So yeah, we'll have to see on that. Also, something else that's worthwhile keeping in mind was, while we're on the subject of idols quickly, the unique idols, the ones that give you passives, keystone passives like destructive play, they are not very rare, or at least they weren't very rare the last time we had this event. So anyways, that's everything related to the Antiquarian. Let's jump over to the Behemoth, because Behemoth is getting its existing one narrow niche that it had. This is the worst ascendancy, right? But its one niche that it had is being ripped away. It's being destroyed, I think, in that regard. But it's getting a new niche, and it's probably actually got a lot better than it was. Oh, and I'll just clarify one more thing before we get into the Behemoth. Raichu in chat is asking, does Yinda's Stand require metal, not crops? No, it requires both. It requires you to get both a certain amount of metal and a certain amount of crops and send them both off. So yeah, that's it there. Let's jump over to the Behemoth though. So Behemoth had the most crushing drawback you have ever seen on Ascendancy, and that was Rampager. Your spells are disabled. Your spells are just turned off. Hey, that doesn't matter very much. Me, big, tough barbarian, me not cast spells, right? Yeah, no. What Rampager was doing was turning off your ability to use auras, turning off your ability to use Blood Rage, turning off your ability to use everything except for war cries and shouting at enemies, and also for donking them on the head with a stick. So many things are spell tagged that you don't expect to be spells, or at least that you think of as being, I am a melee ability. Now, Rampager is being changed. Rampager is going to turn off your auras. It is also now going to turn off your war cries, but you can now use it in conjunction with Heralds. You can now use it in conjunction with cast when damage taken, Molten Shell. Or, if you want full memes, you could even play this on a build that is completely silly, like you could probably try and make cast when stun work here. But this is a complete transformation of what it used to do, and as a result, all Behemoth builds that existed last time are in the scrap heap completely, but new builds will exist, and they'll be better than the old ones were. The other niche that the Behemoth had was that it was the best thing to use in conjunction with a dedicated aura support character. And I think that probably actually continues. In fact, that's boosted by the fact that you can now reserve some of your mana to cast Heralds. But the really big thing with Behemoth is that as long as you're okay with not having the defenses that are provided by auras, you do get quite a lot out of this now. So Rampager, 10% increased character size. Pure cool. No benefit, just fun. Spells deal no damage, and also your spells are disabled. Melee hits count as Rampage kills, Rampage. So you're basically going berserk with Rampage all the time. This was such a bad drawback with your spells are disabled that it was just rendered unusable. Nowadays, it probably still does have spells deal no damage. So yeah, cast when stunned is not going to work. Except you can use Cast on Death Portal now. So that's a point there. Now, after that, you then pick up all these other effects that were quite good, but that were unusable because the drawbacks were so severe there. So, increased attack speed per fortification, and fortification is really, really, really good. There's so much so much power that's here. Okay, granted, that's a 6-pointer, so it's 2 to get to here, then 4 more to get here. But Dire Rampart's really good. Melee hits fortify, regen life based upon the amount of fortification you've got. So that's the tanky side. You lose your auras, but you do pick up new powerful defensive options here, and they are defensive options that also give you an attack benefit. Drawback, though, is that unlike the champion, you are not going to be running around on high fortification, for instance, when you come out of a 5-second boss invulnerability phase. So whilst you might have a high amount of fortification most of the time, you're going to get caught out where your defenses are going to fall off. Final blow. This one is fun. Plus 10% to unarmed melee attack critical strike chance. Your critical strike chance is lucky while on low life. So if you're willing to play as a low life setup, which is kind of hard with some of the other drawbacks that are applicable here, but if you're willing to do that, you'll get much more. But generally speaking, you can get your critical strike chance pretty high. That's 10% base crits, so that's basically on par with what wands have. You're going to be able to build crit if you really want to do so, and you don't need to give up the amulet. There is that unarmed amulet that does that already, but that's the best item slot in the game. After this, we have plus 4 mana per 4 strength, and also 80% of your mana is converted to twice that much armor, which is also quite tanky. This one is something that might be worth playing around with. You got to do some weird things with this. So what's the exact text on the Shaper gloves again? Is it the Shaper's Touch, or is it something else that was mana per strength and also doesn't have any armor on it though? Thought it did. I mean, it's got its own intrinsic armor, but that's just normal for a piece. It doesn't have a massive amount of armor, it just has a moderate amount. So that's plus 1 mana per 4 strength, and the Behemoth itself is giving you plus 4 mana, so no, it doesn't really work with that. You need to have one of the setups that gives you a tremendous amount of mana for this to be good, but it's a pretty strong effect if you're wanting to just scale armor and then do other things with it. And armor applying to chaos damage taken from hits makes you... This is almost indestructibility to... This, even when there was a mastery that gave you 10% of your armor applies to chaos damage taken from hits, that made you feel pretty much indestructible to chaos hits. And so getting it at 100% is really strong. You can end up with a lot of defenses here, but at the same time, your only offense is a Rampager. And then 2% increased attack damage per 450 armor. That's the nutty thing, but you don't have the auras to really scale that. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on here for a different type of armor stacker that's fast, but not quite scaling, or not scaling nearly as high as what you can get on a proper armor stacker that can use auras. However, you can get the benefits of auras from another player, and that's what's really, really solid there. After this, we have Tireless Frenzy. We covered that already. Sheer Fury, which is plus 15 max rage, and instantaneously popping up to max rage on hit is way stronger than people give it credit for. And then Fueled by Hate is the thing I think was getting buffed, wasn't it? So Behemoth is going, no longer has 50% increased rage cost of skills. And, Final Blow I missed some of these other ones that were getting buffed down the bottom as well. Mental Conditioning is getting its effect doubled. Wow. Okay, that's way better than I thought. That's really strong. That armor setup might actually be better now. And then you've got 50% crit multi with unarmed melee attacks is quite substantial there, because you don't get all that much of it. But you will have to play around with that. There's definitely an unarmed build that uses Meryl's Fallacy and some of these shenanigans, I think. And then, Fueled by Hate. So this is getting buffed as well. And it's, instead of 50% increased rage cost of skills, it's now essentially Hate Forge. So there is a lot in the Behemoth. Behemoth, I think, is one of those things where it's probably going to miss, but if it doesn't miss, there's something really powerful in this package. I'm not seeing a cohesive set here. I'm not seeing a cohesive whole, but I do think it probably exists. It's just going to be one of those things that someone is going to think of at some point in the next little while, and they're going to put it all together. Anyways, I noticed now that we've had a bunch of people join the stream recently, and if you are in that category, feel free to rewind and put the speed up a little bit until you catch up. You'll probably need to, you're not going to catch up for a while if you've just joined, but you might find that that's worth your while considering. At least there's an option here. And also, no slams on Behemoth anymore. That's definitely the case. No slams are available on Behemoth anymore. Okay, so now we're going to get to the Ancestral Commander. Can I get someone to put a comment down in chat that at 46.44, jump to there for Ancestral Commander details. Not in chat, in the comments, I'm talking. 46.44 would be the timestamp for it, and just say that that's where the Ancestral Commander stuff is. And then we'll jump into this. Ancestral Commander was completely and utterly busted last time. The last couple of times Phrecia events have run, it was so dominant that people who weren't interested in playing it felt pressured to play it. Now, that was more so in the Gauntlet events that ran with this than anything else, but it was definitely the case that this was being run a lot. It is getting nerfed, but it is not getting gutted. And if you like the Juggernaut experience, this is going to be, instead of being Juggernaut, but better than Trickster used to be in the base game defensively, it is now going to be Juggernaut, but Juggernaut done different. It's still going to be very strong. It's just not going to be absolutely crazy. And it's going to be something that you don't have to have that FOMO of play the broken thing now or never get to be able to play it again. So I think that this is going to be a really fine setup here. It's going to be solid, but it's no longer going to be absolutely bonkers. At least that's my thoughts. So let's go through the changes. Ancestral Endurance is now +2 maximum endurance charges rather than +3, so it is in line with what is normal for an Ascendancy. You're no longer going to get something that feels like a 4-pointer. Ancestral Defiance is now going to be normal 4-pointer in power, rather than being something that was just off the planet power. Is now going to gain 10% of missing unreserved life before you suffer the damage from an enemy, rather than 15% as it was previously. So this is Defiance of Destiny. Every time Grunnier games have had this effect in the game, they've made it way more powerful than I think they intended. Comment section may not be possible yet. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Just responding to timestamping this for people that wanted to find out later. I'll try to remember it for later. I'll probably end up forgetting, but that's one of the things is a drawback when you're doing something in a on a stream. There's always little bits you miss that if I was doing this as an edited video, I'd probably miss a few things because, you know, people will have different opinions to me. People will pick up things I didn't, like I didn't pick up the change to the Behemoth intelligence node. until people pointed it out. So, you know, there's all those sorts of things that you miss that other people pick up. I would have missed out on the Supreme Ostentation note as well at first. I would have probably thought of that after I'd edited it and gone, oh, that was silly of me. Anyways, Ancestral Defiance is worse than it was, but it's still so good that you have to take it. So that's really the case with this bottom sickle type thing here, this downward and then leftwards. These nodes are mandatory because they're still overpowered. Even though they're getting a third of their power taken off, those choices are made for you. Any other choice is just wrong. And then after you've taken those, then you can investigate the rest of what's available on the tree. Now, they're going to some of the things that were not used very much, and they're boosting them a little bit, but generally speaking, these are, or some of them are changes too, like Warcry cooldown recovery rate being reduced on this and Warcry speed being boosted. That's sort of a swapping around of what it used to do. So Call of the Ancestors, this is being changed around. It's better and worse at the same time. It obviously leads to Death Rattle down the line, which I think is unchanged completely. But swapping this around is probably an improvement once tattoos are available, but before tattoos, it's neutral. It's still a good 2-pointer because the positive is so much higher in numerical effect than the negative, but it's not everyone is going to like this, even though I think it's overall about the same. After this, we've got Calm's Leadership from the Spirit of Calm. I think this is... Okay, so yeah, this is definitely a buff. This, even though you can see the number on this is lower, this now requires less Namahu tattoos to get to the same point. Let's have a quick think as to what this looks like at 6 tattoos. This is now going to be 25% times 1.6 versus 15% times 2.2. It's still better at 6 tattoos. If you were to go to 10 tattoos, we're looking at 50 versus 45 it used to be, so still better. If you go to 20 tattoos, we're looking at 75% transference versus the old transference of... So 20 tattoos of the Namahu tribe is the break-even point, and I'm just making sure that it isn't capped at below at a point that you can't use that. Spirit of Calm is not really clarified there. Yeah, so the break-even point on that is 20 Namahu tattoos, and it's going to be hard to get... Well, it's not going to be hard to get 20 yourself if you're willing to allocate bad ones, but you probably aren't willing to allocate bad ones. If you're using totems, then yeah, I think this is just better than it was. I don't know how much that damage transference is allowed to scale, but whether you're allowed to go all the way to 30 or not. I've never tested that. Utula's Leadership is strictly better than it used to be. It's better at every possible number of tattoos you could have. And then we have Ancestral Reach and Echo are swapping locations. So Ancestral Echo and Reach, yes, so that's your other 4 points, I think, for most people. Ancestral Reach is going to be crazy good. Ancestral Echo is disappointing. This effect's strike skills also target the previous location where they were used. This is available on a ring. I think it might be called Warrior's Legacy, and it only applies if you have moved. So that is something that always disappoints people compared to what it looks like. Anyways, my final verdict on the Ancestral Commander is that it is still very playable if you want to play a tanky melee build. It just offers different things to the Juggernaut. Sort of a more... it's different in flavor to the Juggernaut, but it's kind of taking a bit from the Berserker, a bit from the Juggernaut, and blending them together into something that doesn't exist in the core game, but that is probably about the power level of... Maybe a bit better than the Juggernaut is. Juggernaut's a very playable base game. It's like in that Juggernaut... This is maybe Juggernaut boosted to the level of Slayer. I feel like that is the vibe that I'm getting from Ancestral Commander. Previously, it was boosted to a level that meant that even if you weren't interested in playing it, you kind of had to. Yeah, Ancestral Echo has some crazy stuff with... He's actually really good with Flicker Strike, I believe. That is a good point that's come up in chat there. So thanks, Sticky Jim and Hatain there for reminding me on that. Very, very solid extra setup there. And when I'm comparing to pre-nerf Trickster, I'm talking Trickster as it was in 325, 326 when it was overpowered. Trickster now is actually still very playable, but it's not very popular because people have played it when it was busted, and whilst it's still fine, it's not busted anymore. And there's both the fatigue of, yeah, I've already played this, and at the same time, not so much power that it's pulling you in to say, yeah, play this anyway. So that's the Ancestral Commander. That's my first thoughts on this. I think it is in a fine position. It's not busted. It's not terrible. And these changes put it into what I feel is a pretty healthy spot. If you like the Ascendancy, play it. And next we have the Shadow. We have the Surfcaster first. These are not in the same order as they are on here for the first time. So anyways, Surfcaster, the 4% cast speed is being added to all of the small nodes. This is substantial. This is actually one of those little things that's bigger than it looks. And that's the reason that, like, Ghost of the Deep, for instance, which is getting nerfed, people have seen this and thought, hey, that's a really, really serious nerf. I don't think it's as serious a nerf as people think it is, because you're getting back some of that power on these small nodes. Now, that's not the case if you're playing a Surfcaster attack build, but I don't think many people were. So that's my thoughts there on that. So basically, Ghost of the Deep is getting nerfed. Some of that power is coming back in these small nodes. For cast speed, it's actually better than it was. And then Screaming Reels is getting a buff as well. This is trying to push you into Surfcaster into being the best self-cast setup. And that is probably what it is. But at the same time, self-cast is kind of in a dubious spot overall. Self-cast hit-based, that is. And so I don't see this quite being enough power to get over that. Sea Legs is getting a buff. Sea Legs is the weird one. This is the one that gives you cold lightning resistances, which actually it's really nice to get resistances on Ascendancies, just reducing the amount of pressure on your gear, which then frees up. It's like it's removing opportunity costs, but it boosts your critical strike chance by your overcap lightning and your evasion rating by your overcap cold res. So you can potentially get both of those, scale those up quite high. Neither of these are as good as the armor version of this. The armor is boosted by your overcap fire res. That is better than either of these options, but Sea Legs does actually have, well, legs. It has legs. Delphatrux in chat is asking when the event is. It is the exact time is on Grinding Gear Games' site, but for me, it is Friday morning, my local, and currently right now it is Tuesday afternoon. So I think it is like 63 hours, but someone can but I would don't take my word for that. Go confirm it on the Grinding Gear Games site. And of course, 63 hours only applies if you're watching this live, and if you're not watching this live, it's going to be less than 63 hours time. And otherwise, yeah, Surfcaster, Ghost of the Deep is losing a little bit. Ghost of the Deep was the best two-pointer for just getting through the campaign fast. It's still the best two-pointer in the game for getting through the campaign fast. Second best. It's still second best, but it's not as crazy as it used to be. Like going from 30% to 23% movement speed is substantial. That is essentially losing a passive point, because Ghost of the Deep, as it used to be, plus helping all bandits, was roughly equivalent to Ghost of the Deep new, and then going and killing helping Creighton. Creighton, I think, is the best choice early in the league anyway. Respec at endgame, if respec at level 95 if that's appropriate for your build. But leaving that aside, like, there's not a huge gulf in the power levels there, and 7% less movement speed is substantial, but honestly, Ghost of the Deep is still great. So yeah, the fastest thing for the campaign is Servant of Arakaali. We'll get to that next. It is actually the next one. And it's not having its busted thing for leveling nerfed. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I say, yeah, Surfcaster, I think we'll say that Surfcaster is like, it was a solid Ascendancy. It's still a solid Ascendancy. It tends to be squishy. So play only if you are okay with Phrecia as a defense layer. Oh, and there's one more thing I need to say with a Surfcaster too. So this one is important. This one's very important. Bated Breath. Bated Breath has the text, all hits are critical strike while holding a fishing rod. There are other things that have almost the same text in the game. For example, Shaper of Flames, all hits ignite is on, all damage from hits ignite is on the text of Shaper of Flames in the base game Elementalist. However, these two are not the same. The way that the Elementalist version works, if you have 0% chance to ignite but no prohibition against igniting, then you will always ignite. With Bated Breath, if you have no chance to crit but no prohibition against critting, and you allocate Bated Breath and you're holding a fishing rod, you actually don't crit. You need to have some degree of base crit, and I believe it's 1%. I'm not sure it's 1%, but I believe it's about 1%. So what this means is that if you want to use this in conjunction with Heralds, which is the main thing you would probably want to consider it with, then you're going to need to get unconditional... you're going to need to get 1 or 2% unconditional critical strike, depending on whether you want to use Maryland's Fallacy. So if you want to use Maryland's Fallacy, you'll need to get 2%. If you just want to use critical strikes without that, then you'll need 1%. And then I believe you have sufficient that the fishing rod boosts you up. I believe the exact way they have coded this is either 99% 100 increase, 9900% or 10,000% increased critical strike chance while holding a fishing rod. So it's kind of like having 198 or 200 power charges. It is not automatic crits, and that's very important. Also, yeah, you're very squishy. So there's some cool stuff that you can do there. And one thing I would keep in mind if you are considering anything in this sort of space is that there is a very, very chaste Foulborn Beric's Respite that exists, but there is also a less chaste version. And the less chaste version, this is the one that's middling in popularity of the three, is the one that has the original Ignite Transference mod, but that it has the Shock mod on it. The Shock Transference on Monster Death mod is replaced by shocked enemies you kill explode, inflicting X% of their life as damage as lightning damage that cannot shock. This is going to be really good in conjunction with this setup potentially. The other thing worth noting is that we probably want to check, maybe it's unintended how Bated Breath works. It's not like they never really clarified how it's meant to work. Players figured that out. So just be aware, Herald of Ice is something. Last league, I attempted something that did not work. And that attempt, first Phrecia league, I attempted to go with a, what's the name of that helmet? Crested Desire. Crested Desire with Herald of Ice in it, so that the Herald of Ice would always critically strike. It would have +8 gem levels from my Crested Desire, and it would deal double damage because Crested Desire does that. And that was my primary reservation. And then I would inflict freezes with Crackling Lance. That was the plan. The reason it didn't work very well was that I then had to squeeze in that base crit into the build, which I probably could have solved, except I didn't know beforehand when in the theory crafting phase that was needed. And I didn't find out that it was needed for quite some time because that wasn't worked out for a while. So yeah, that's something that's important to note there on that side of things. Anyways, that is the Surfcaster. Surfcaster, good. Next up we have the Servant of Arakaali, which I should have probably covered. Oh no, I didn't cover first because of the order that they're covered here. So Silk Dancer, this is now improving the effects of your spider webs. So this is Servant of Arakaali is a cool ascendancy, and it is going to have this. This is the 4-pointer, unfortunately. It's behind Aspect of the Spider. Aspect of the Spider is intrinsically good, though. So keep that in mind. I did mention earlier, though, I want to jump over to this. Why is it that Malevolent Strands is the best notable for leveling in the entire game? It's because level 15 Envy is crazy. Like, level 15 Envy. How much is level 15 Envy? It is... So, level 15 Envy is 91 to 121 additional chaos damage with attacks. Level 1 Envy corresponds to level 1. Level 15 Envy corresponds to level 2 values below. Yeah, so, okay. It's 101 to 141 to attacks. It's 91 to 121 with spells. Now, let's go to POEDB for a sec. I'm going to do this in another window so that it doesn't flashbang everyone badly when I jump onto POEDB. I want to just bring up Fireball as an example of a spell. Okay, so Fireball. What we're looking at here is a spell that has an effectiveness of added damage that's sort of in the 300% range at mid-level. We'll just say it's 300%. So, Envy. Envy is dealing the average damage that this is added, 91 to 121, so that's 106 average damage. 300% of effectiveness. Actually, no, that's 91 to 121. That's Fireball spreads a little bit less, doesn't it? Okay, so what I want to do is give a comparison in terms of how many gem levels this is like adding. So you're adding 106 flat damage. Let's say that you've got a level 14 Fireball. 106 flat damage is then times 3 because of the effectiveness of added damage. So even though you can't scale this very well, it's kind of like going from level 14 all the way up to level 16. That's still substantial, right? But what if you are not level 14 now? What if instead your Fireball was only level 8? Well, it's now going to boost it all the way up to the damage a level 14 Fireball would do. So it's like plus 6 gem levels at that point to have Envy on. Envy is just absolutely crazy when it comes to giving you early game damage. So that's why the Arakaali's Servant of Arakaali is so ridiculous for leveling. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely and utterly busted crazy there. So that's really silly. Anyways, let's go through the other changes that are taking place on this. So Silk Dancer is getting better. It's actually pretty substantial because those spider webs spread out quite a bit. Minus 20 to all resistances. That minus 20 includes chaos. This is a good scaling vector, but it's not an amazing one. It's a lot you're investing in here. It kind of feels like some of the occultist nodes in the base game, but maybe a bit worse than the occultist nodes get. I feel like the occultist nodes offer a little bit more. Fatal Bite. When you're at maximum power charges, 40% of physical added as extra chaos. Previously, this was 30%. So Fatal Bite, unfortunately, suffers from being another 4-pointer. It is very good. If your base damage is physical, then this is going to have a high payoff. But your base damage at this point, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself hard into being a poison build here. Fatal Bite's going to come online about the point that Envy starts to fall off. So you could potentially go with maybe your first points are Malevolent Strands, then you go Thread Spinner, and maybe you go something else. Maybe you even go Skincrawler's Broodguard, and then at some point you unspec Malevolent Strands and spec Fatal Bite once that's more damage. That might be how you go there. Those are the options that you could play around with in that spot. Weaver's Contrition now gains an additional 50% increased effect of your marks on top of granting you Penance Mark. 50% increased marks is really good with, what's it called? The Sniper's Mark. Really, really good effect on that, but I just don't feel like you're the Ascendancy that wants to Penance Mark. I feel like that's more for Chieftain in the base game. I can't see myself wanting Penance Mark here. So basically, whilst that's a buff, I don't think it's an important one. Skincrawlers has your minions are 20% to inflict withered on hit. That's big. That's actually really big because if you're playing minion poison, and given that Broodguard is here as an option for doing that, there's a lot of support for it. Withered is a very powerful buff. It's a very powerful damage multiplier that it's going to increase your uptime a lot. You're going to feel like this is going to look really bad. This change is going to look like a nothing change in POB, but it's probably actually going to be a big deal there. Otherwise, the Weaver of Arakaali, the Servant of Arakaali is one of those things that's tremendous early on the basis of Malevolent Strand, but it would be a shame if there was no option that you could transfer out of once you feel like you've got everything you can out of the Servant of Arakaali, the best leveling ascendancy in the game. And Surfcaster is an option, but if that doesn't fit for you, maybe Blind Prophet is. Blind Prophet is getting nerfed, but Blind Prophet was absurdly good last time. And actually, this is less of a nerf than I thought might happen. So, Blind Prophet has a first notable you're forced to take that makes you blind. Being blind is roughly 20% less accuracy, 20% less evasion rating. It's not an overwhelmingly bad drawback. It's a nuisance. Now, your base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons is going from 12% to 9%. I'm trying to think how much of a nerf that really is. It's less of a loss than a support gem would be. So you are definitely losing something from it. But where Blind Prophet really shines is if you want to play with weird weapon types, unpopular weapon types. There's a lot to go from here. I still think that this is a strong Ascendancy overall, and the most popular setup people used was Directionless and Careless, and then that kind of forces you, that sort of forces your hand to take either Shapeless or Restless. Careless is just so good, though, that like you definitely want this if you can get it. But that forces you down this path or you can take Lightless. Lightless is very much build around. Like, this transforms the way you build, but it forces you to build in weird ways. Everything else, though, is just good stuff. You can either go Restless and get Asenath's Gentle Touch, which is fine, or alternately, you can go with the other setup instead. All in all, the amount of the amount of investment you need to regain the power level that you used to have is a bit less than increased critical strike support. So increased critical strike support would get you up to 11% base crit, and then would also give you a whole chunk of extra percentage crit. So you need less than that. That's why I'm saying it's less than a support gem. So I think that this ascendancy is, I think this is completely fine. You can use this with whatever weird and wonderful ascendancy you want. The other thing, though, that I would say about the Blind Prophet is that a bunch of weapons have had their base critical strike chance buffed since this ascendancy was last used. And those are going to feel worse because of these changes. So, like, Kaposin in chat has mentioned that wands are going to feel really bad with this, because wands and daggers both had their base critical chances buffed substantially. And so even if it still said 12%, it would feel like it's less power that you're getting because those items are being buffed. That said, I think if you're going to play this, you're playing with claws. Like, you're almost certainly playing with claws on this ascendancy, or you're playing with a unique with some sort of unique. And yeah, you've got Directionless is crazy good. Like, this is almost Nimbus. It's not Nimbus, but I feel like the position that Blind Prophet is in now, it used to be that this was the best ascendancy in the game for projectile builds in both base game and normal game at all gear levels. Now I think it's the best ascendancy for projectiles up to but not including I can afford Nimbus level. That's my current feeling here. Once you get to the point that you can afford Nimbus, you can probably do better. At that point, you don't really have many options to swap to on Servant of Arakaali or on Surfcaster. They're just different builds. So at that point, once you secure Nimbus, you're going to be re-rolling. That's my thoughts as to where this is going to go with the Shadow. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. You can also look down some of the roads less traveled if you want. Faithless, your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges, is an amazing effect, but you can get it for a ring slot. I think a ring slot is better than a 6-pointer node. Like, sure, the nodes before it are good, but Faithless isn't worth it. Formless isn't worth it either, even though Shade Form is crazy powerful. Shade Form has a tremendously long cooldown on it, so not something you definitely want. But Lightless does really strong things. Lightless transforms the way you build your character completely, and Lightless in conjunction with the existing Abyss stacking, like there's a bunch of pieces for Abyss stacking that almost make a good build at the moment. So you would use Darkness Enthroned, you would use Light Poacher, and then you would use what's the name of that chess piece? The Shroud of the Lightless. Like, those three have a bunch of synergy with each other, and then you would probably need to use a pseudo link in your gloves as whatever your main skill is. That's probably the thought there. So yeah, those are basically thoughts for that. A good question has come up for the first time. This has been asked a lot on Reddit. Have they said anything about potentially extending this event? I don't think they can extend it much, and I also don't think, based upon the performance of the first Phrecia, that there'll be much demand for it. The first Phrecia was an event that was very popular for the first like 4 or 5 days. Then it had a pretty lackluster second weekend, and it was pretty close to a dead league by week 3. And there's definitely some individual players that it's like that the event is too short for, but I think those players would probably have more fun staying in keepers, because this is going to be a degenerate event for degenerate players, basically. This is going to be like the people who think Affliction was the best league ever, they're going to love Phrecia. The people who thought Affliction was just, or current actually Path of Exile 2, feel like everything is just, I'm buried under inflation. The rich people have got so much money, they're able to bully me out of every market. Those people are going to find that this is a genuinely bad event for them. And whilst people are talking about how being able to instant buy out idols is going to make things feel better, sometimes it's also going to mean that the price swings on idols are going to be wild. You might find a set of idols, you go to bed, you're halfway through compiling a set of idols, you're paying 1 divine and idol for each of them. You go to bed and then you wake up and each of those idols is 24 divines. And that's just because Fubguns posted a video, and instant trade has meant that, you know, everyone that wants to buy into that is able to do so quickly. And at the same time, everyone that wants to trade snipe is able to do so quickly as well. So this is going to be crazy. POE 2 style recombination is coming up as well in chat. That's going to be trashed here unless Grinding Games have set certain constants certain ways. We don't know what those constants are, but idols have a lot of low probability roll mods on them, and those things generally do not recombinate well. So we'll see. But yeah, Deathwing is commenting about wanting massive buffs to item drops. Like, it's kind of hard to say. In Path of Exile 2, they've had huge buffs to drops there. It's and that league seems to that league, a lot of people bounced from it early. Path of Exile 1 had Affliction, where it was popular with the high drops. Then Necropolis was like Affliction but more of it, and people didn't like it. Then Phrecia, Affliction but much more of it, like much higher drops again. I think there's this thing where people like the first time they play a league where drops are much higher than anything they've experienced before, and then they don't tend to like that again after that. So anyways, we'll see exactly what goes on with all of that, but that's predictions. And we shall see exactly what is going to come up next here, though, in terms of other changes. So that's the Blind Prophet. Blind Prophet is worse than it was. It's still very playable. And it just hits a cap. It hits a cap. When you are rich enough to afford Nimbus, you don't want to be this ascendancy anymore. That's my thought. I've had a request, a mid-stream request to say, oh, howdy y'all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. So there you go. There you go, Garbage Man. That's what we're talking about there. Now, let's jump over to the Witch and the Harbinger. This one is kind of cool. So, Harbinger is getting big buffs that I was not really sure. And the funny thing here is that, so, Grinding Games have put this thing on this where they've said, the passive the community believes is called Arcane Recovery per the wiki, because they have to unconditionally identify it. I don't think they wanted to put any images in there. And so this is the way that the ascendancy plays out. It's kind of a complete mess. But the most important thing to note is passives that granted visiting Harbingers have been swapped with their preceding notables. This is a very big change that totally transforms the entire ascendancy. So this is very hard to judge at the moment. As a lot of these things are now, like a lot of these notables that used to grant you 40 of a stat now grant you 100, but they're 4-pointers instead of 2-pointers. So very different. And let's go through here. The passive the community believes is called Arcane Recovery. Per the wiki, it now has 50% increased ES recovery rate, previously 30, and now has 50% mana recovery rate, previously 30. And this one is this notable here, but this is now a 4-pointer. And all these greater Harbinger effects, they're pretty strong, but they're not necessarily absolutely amazing. So this is one in particular is a mixed bag. Oh, that's Krangled. Let me try and bring that one back. There we go. That's brought it back. So this is... I don't actually like this narrow change, but some of the other ones are better. So the one that the community believes is called Weakness Quelled, Spirit Awoken now has debuffs on you expire 100% faster, previously 30%, and also still has buffs on you expire 30% slower. So buffs on you expire 30% slower is nice, but neither here nor there. Debuffs on you expire 100% faster is huge in conjunction with those silly delirium boots. That's basically it. That's the only thing that's really crazy on it. Sticky Jim raises a very good point. I believe you can only get one of the Harbinger summons at a time, and that might mean that means that you're going to have to take Temporal Chains has no reservation if cast as an aura and 100% increase. You're going to have to take these two. Oh, that's a mess. Actually, that's a mess. But yeah, because this is so limiting. Like the channeling one is so limiting. You're going to have to take a bloodline. You have to take Temp Chains, Reservation, a 4-pointer, and a Bloodline. 100% faster debuffs is great. But yeah, that point about Summoned Harbinger skills is really substantial. So, and 55% CDR instead of 40% is nice. But I'm now starting to think actually Harbinger is not in a good spot. I don't think. I think the only thing here is 100% debuff speed and the temporal chain stuff. There is something in this ascendancy, but you're going to end up with a 4-pointer that is Harbinger of Focus, then 100% debuffs. You got your silly boots, you got temporal chains, and then you've got something from a Delirium Bloodline potentially. There's options there, but it's basically really weird. Unless they've changed that, but I don't see any changes that allow it. And it is the case, yeah, historically you could only use one of them. Is a good point that yes, you could now conceivably hit higher breakpoints than have been possible in the past with cooldown recovery, getting 55% instead of 40%. But I think that the rate is really not there. I think this is now pigeonholed into one particular thing. Maybe there's a corner case cooldown recovery setup that is worth it. But yeah, actually, chat's now convinced me that Harbinger is actually worse than it was, not better. So that's unfortunate. But anyways, they can't all be winners. But the one that I was most expecting to see a nerf on has actually... no. Ancestral Commander was the most likely to get nerfed. Herald I was not expecting to dodge the nerf bat. I wasn't expecting Herald to get nerfs everywhere, but I was expecting a certain number to get toned down. And that number is Scourge Virulence. 25 to maximum virulence is crazy. So, we say a support gem is 40% more damage, right? Scourge is like... At least at the start, it's not actually going to be this in practice, but at least at the start, it's 60% more damage, 60% more damage, 60% more attack speed. That's what it is at the start when your maximum virulence is 40. You're not actually going to have 40. You're going to have, where else do you get there? You get like 5 on each of 2 or 3 different 2 or 3 different cluster jewels, maybe more. I think it actually ends up being more like going from 60 to 85. But even then, this is like 3 layers of 40% more damage. It's absolutely off the planet, this power. And that Scourge is coming as... Sure, it's a 4-pointer, but it's behind a good 2-pointer. You're now getting Future Anguish, which is now 150%... 150% increased Herald of Agony buff effect, which means 10% chance to poison, and 80% Chaos Res. So I wouldn't be stoked about spending an entire Ascendancy passive on 80% Chaos Res and 10% chance to poison. On 15% chance to poison, but I'm content with that. That's okay. Future Nostalgia is not terrible. Scourge is busted. Apocalypse is great. It's not busted great, but it's very much... It's at the better end of 2-pointers. and then you've got 2 points to spend somewhere else. Honestly, if the Ascendancy was just Scourge, if that was all you got for the Herald Ascendancy, that would be a good 8-pointer. But you don't just get that. You get 80% Chaos Res, you get 15% chance to poison, you get +3 gem levels. This thing is absolutely crazy. Now, people are mentioning, yes, you can have trouble stacking up enough virulence on certain bosses. The solution there is not using only one skill to inflict virulence on bosses. The solution there is putting a brand down and also Ball Lightning of Orbiting, or even just classic Ball Lightning will do the job. So yeah, basically, bunch of really good stuff here. Oh yeah, sorry, good point. You are forced to take Coming Calamity, aren't you? That is a good point. It is 8 points to get to Apocalypse. Yeah, that's right. I was forgetting that. I was actually completely misreading Coming Calamity as the starting point of the whole thing. But yeah, you're getting 200% reservation efficiency on there is fine as well. Now, yeah, Lancing Steel of Spraying is something. There is I have seen a couple of things thrown around over on the Path of Exile build subreddit. One of them is a Lancing Steel of Spraying version of the build. One is the more traditional Stormbrand and Stormbrand for trash and Ball Lightning of Orbiting for bosses. And you can just use classic Ball Lightning. There's a lot of things you can use there. One thing I will mention is that you must make sure that you are dealing at least some physical or chaos damage on the skill that you want to trigger it with. So if we go back to where are we? Or just let's use the Envy one. Chance to Poison support. What's it called? Chance to Poison support. Can't remember. They changed the name on this at some point too. Yeah, here we are. So this adds chaos damage. So this is a solution on its own, and it solves a lot of your problems. It gets you. You've got 35% chance to poison just from the, Herald of Agony. And then you've got 40% from this. You don't need much more. But then that can give you some chaos damage so that you are able to inflict poison. Don't get rid of chance to poison support, even if you don't need that 40% chance to poison, because you need to be dealing some chaos damage. And Cold Iron Point is coming up in chat. Cold Iron Point is something that is fine early on. Cold Iron Point is an item you outgrow on the Herald build. There are lots of ways of doing it though. Like, there are so many different ways that you can set this up. Yeah, so thanks for the correction on the on taking all the points to reach Apocalypse, because I was misreading that. Having not played it personally, I've played around with it in POB, but yeah. Apocalypse is skippable though. Apocalypse is really good. I also have realized that I made a mistake in a previous video where I talked this up as well. I made that same mistake. So good to get there. That's one of the good things about doing a live stream. You make mistakes, people call them out, and then they aren't there as an enduring reminder of they're there as an enduring reminder, but you actually correct them before you get too hyped in them. Now, the other question that comes up a little bit with the Herald Ascendancy as well. What about other choices entirely? You could go Apocalypse and Sentinels of Purity, so through Scourge. That feels viable. I am less convinced that I've seen anyone do the Elemental Heralds with this. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just not sold on it. And partly, +3 level of Herald skill gems doesn't help very much with the Elemental Heralds. It's not nothing, but they don't scale very well with gem levels past 20. They do scale with them, but they don't have the level that a lot of other things do. And you're not getting enough else on the setup. The key thing I like about the Herald though, if you want to play Herald of Agony in the base game, you get defenses from your Ascendancy, and you then use a jank chest piece like Diala's Malefaction in order to get more virulence than you otherwise could. With the Herald Ascendancy, you get all your offense from your Ascendancy, and then you can use just plain defensive gear instead. So yeah, that's the sort of thing. Herald of the Hive is an interesting question here. Would you run... So, you could get critical strike chance with Persecution on Herald of the Hive. 50% increased area of effect is nice on Herald of the Hive. You get one of the future nodes. You get Coming Calamity solves a lot of your mana reservation stuff. I could see that working. An interesting clarification there from King of Nebushes. Apparently with the Harbingers, you can have one from the Ascendancy, one from items, but that doesn't solve the problem of that. If Lycia is very much a viable option to consider. You should definitely be considering Lycia for this. And also, don't completely forget about the option of a defensive bloodline. The other thing, if you're going Herald of Agony, so here's where your gem levels come from, right? You get 3 from Apocalypse, you get 3 from Cold Iron Point early on, which you'll then get rid of. You get 2 from the helmet, and you get 1 from your amulet. Your amulet has to be Ashes of the Stars. Ashes of the Stars is best in slot, but you can use something else early on until you can afford Ashes. And then you get 1 from your gem. So that gets you to 30. That's the low opportunity cost things. But with Herald of Agony, 28 is a big breakpoint, 29 is a massive breakpoint, and then everything past 30 is bad except 33 to 34. But 33 to 34 is not spectacular, it's just solid. 28 to 29 is monstrous on this setup. As for getting Lycia Bloodline, you can do it yourself, or you can just get someone else if you want to do so. You got lots of options like that. And he's Sanctum Alliance, lol. Anyways, so that's the Herald. Going through the other things. So, Persecution, 10% base crit. This is massively better than it was. It kind of needed it, but it's really solid. Retribution, we didn't really look into this. This is the one that gives you a chance to gain Elemental Conflux when you kill an enemy. So Elemental Conflux is you always ignite, you always freeze, you always shock. So it's pretty strong. And it's giving you a lot now. This is actually a really, really live effect. The problem is that it's kind of hard to make this work. Like, I feel like Retribution would be at its best, and this is really getting into meme territory, right? So here you go to Persecution, and you go to Retribution, which is your 8 points. Then you Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh in the Shaper of Flames notable, which is going to be hard to get because that's like everyone wants that. But when you've got that, you then have some really silly stuff going on where your Herald of Ice is critting, and that crit is igniting things, but it freezes and it ignites. If the ignite is what kills the enemy, that should then, like, you could get a whole bunch of chain propagation. It basically improves the ability for you to chain through packs with this Retribution setup. So that could be silly. Damnation is now better than it used to be. For each element you've been hit by... So this is the thing that is based upon... Oh wait, Damnation's... Is this just getting extra words? So for each element you've been hit by damage of recently, 25% reduced damage taken to that element. Previously 20%. No, previously it was nothing there at all. And also has 25% of all element damage recouped as life. Oh, they changed this. Okay, they changed this. This was the Eternal Damnation. That's not what's live. That would explain it. All hits chill, not freeze. Thanks for the clarification on that, chat. Again, this is useful. Elemental Conflux is something I have only played with in conjunction with... oh, wait, no, I'm thinking of it in terms of... it's not even Elemental Conflux on Leadership's Price. It's something else. That is right. Damnation got changed before released. Yeah, that is a good point. Interesting. People saying they think that they prefer Replica Dragonfang's Flight. I would go so far as to say that Ashes is better even than a Reflected Focused Amulet that's +4. Because gem levels are so unimportant on beyond 29. Once you get your 29, gem levels they're not a dead stat, but they're close to it on Herald of Agony. There'll be other situations where like a Focused Amulet with Hinakora's Lock Reflection is better. But I think that's... I would keep that in mind. Anyways, Herald looking really good. Herald is probably my league starter. Herald is likely to be the first character I play would be the Herald with that sort of Herald of Agony setup, and then at some point we'll shift over to make something else. I feel like it's going to be it's probably going to be one of the best ascendancies to get to Uber Pinnacle bosses on, but not to trivialize the Uber Pinnacles. The Uber Pinnacles will still they'll still be tough, but they'll be easier than they normally are. And that's my thought on that. Anyways, Bog Shaman. Bog Shaman is next. So Bog Shaman is getting a bunch of little changes on it as well. We go through all these changes are basically the same as each other. They're just like the buff effect is better and the but not by a tremendous amount, and the defensive bonuses are better, or the utility bonuses are better. So, Chaos Resistance and Curse Effect is now granting 4% maximum life instead of 5% increased effect of your curses. This is a neutral change, maybe even slightly worse than it was, but it does have more synergy with the rest of the ascendancy. So maybe it ends up being better overall. Eerie Silence, I think, was mostly considered unplayably bad by players, wasn't it? So enemies pacified by you. Yeah, so this is the one that, like, it requires you to do weird things with controlling the duration of your curses. This feels like it would be more in play, more appropriate, not in Path of Exile 2 as it currently is, but Path of Exile 2's original vision, this might have worked. Currently, no. I just think that's going from a useless skill. Like, this is like taking Siphoning Trap and giving it 75% more damage. 75% more damage is a big buff, but it's still Siphoning Trap. Venom Drinker now has 100% increased poison duration on you. So this is the one that has that you are inflicting poisons on yourself deliberately. This is actually a buff, but it's kind of a bit sketchy. It is now more important to invest hard in Chaos Resistance than it was, but Venom Drinker is worth it. And there's also, I believe this has crazy shenanigans with Tainted Pact, and we might have an expert in chat that can talk about this one here. I believe that we have Sticky Gym 8, not to be confused with Slippery Gym 8. These are like mortal enemies of each other. One of them is Sticky, one of them is Slippery. But Tainted Pact, it's one of those items that I know there are experts about this item, and I am not one of them. So let's just go and look it up again, because this is taking chaos damage over time, heals you instead while you are leeching life. So as long as you're currently leeching life, this is going to make you tankier. Yeah, there's not really that much synergy. It's like your recovery is better, but your recovery was already better. So increased duration of poisons on you does not affect reflected poisons either. So yeah, all right. Well, that changes. That's good to know. This is where it's good to have a live stream where people who know some of these really weird corner case things can pop in and say, hey, guess what? You're wrong about this thing. Let's get the actual clarification. So it's a very corner case interaction. Let's just say Venom Drinker is unchanged for most people, and whether you want to use it or not is up to you. Skills gain added chaos damage equal to 60% of mana cost if the mana cost is not higher than you could spend. So this is down here. Your spells deal you 100% of mana spent on upfront skill costs as physical damage, and then they're gaining more for that drawback. Now, this is behind nearby enemies have malediction and 30% reservation efficiency of curse auras. So it's behind something that is like Vile Imprecations is mid-tier, right? There is nothing wrong with this node. It's not something you would take as a 2-pointer, but it's not far behind being worth taking as a 2-pointer. It's sort of almost there. And then Rotten Core is now quite a bit better behind it. So that's something, if you're wanting to go down that way, it's fine. But Fel Fen is the big one. Chaos Resistance is 0, is crushingly bad. That's gone. It's just all upside now. Just use this. It's really good. And it has, now that it's safe to use, it's probably actually really strong in conjunction with something like Rotten Core. So you could conceivably take that. This one is really, really... it's changed, has it? Fel Fen? Fel Fen has changed. Or Vile has changed. Vile Imprecations has changed. Okay. So we're looking up the Vile Imprecations, needs a quick look at it. Thank you for the correction on that then. Vile Imprecations... No, Vile Imprecations hasn't changed, has it? Or did it, or is it just out of date on the wiki? So you're saying it's +1 curse, but the wiki is incorrect on it. Okay, cool. Let me just bring up POB 1, and I actually got POB 1 for once. The number of times, because POB 1 and POB 2 are both on my hotbar, I'm just going to grab the exact details on this down there. So let's go new build. Go back. New. And we're going to go... we don't have 326 7 alternate ascendancies, so we're going to go 326 alternate ascendancies. And can you guys see? No, you can't see it. Okay, I should probably fix that. Path of building needs to be shown like that. And now, all right, there we go. So we have here Vile Imprecation. No, Vile Imprecation is still showing as it's on the patch notes. Is it? Oh, Vile Imprecations is later. Okay. This is me being... This is when I have made a stupid misunderstanding of what's going on here. I thought people were telling me that it had already changed. It has changed in the patch notes. Violent imprecations. Okay. All right. Thank you all for putting up with me during that. In my defense, it is the hottest day in a long time in Melbourne. We are expecting, I don't know if we're actually going to hit this, but the forecast today was 41 Celsius. So for those of you that are in the United States, it's 104 Fahrenheit. And parts of the state are possibly going to hit, if they hit the forecast, which they may not, it will be the first time that we've ever hit 120 Fahrenheit anywhere in the state, although that's like the far northwest corner of the state. So anyways, it's a hot day. I'm kind of a bit spaced out as a result of that. So that's that's the reason that I was kind of exasperating you all there by getting that wrong. These are the sorts of things that get cut out. Every time that you see me in a normal video that like I sort of disappear and come back wearing something else, that's because I've made a stupid mistake like that and I've picked it up later. And anyways, Vile Imprecations no longer has 30% reservation efficiency of curse aura skills and now has you can apply an additional curse. And that is now, then also, that makes it even better to have Fel Fen. Although, +1 curse is, +1 curse is kind of not unconditionally useful if you're doing chaos damage. It is. I mean, it's a defensive benefit because you can always go Enfeeble or Temporal Chains as your second curse. Or if you already had a limit of 2, you can go to 3. There'll be the odd corner case where this works, but yeah, Vile Imprecations is better than it was. Thank you all for clarifying that. Fel Fen, though, is the one that I think this is just so much better than it was. Like, nearby enemies, Chaos Res is 0, no drawback on it anymore. Take that in conjunction with Vile Imprecations, the better version of Rotten Core, so that you're getting a whole bunch of flat, added Chaos damage there. And then just anything that's got reasonable basic damage. What you do with the rest of it is up to you. Maybe you go Toad Pact if you want to deal with the drawback. Toad Pact is now just the same as it was, but more of it. So Toad Pact's drawback is more severe, but in exchange for that, you get larger benefits from it. Toad Pact is really good. Or alternately, you can just go with something else. Like Sanguine Power is a really cool effect. Gain life instead of energy shield from equipped armor items, which then is something that you can then put together with that cluster. So yeah, Bog Witch, really cool. Bog Witch, Bog Shaman, Righteous Fire Bog Witch is an interesting thought that a lot of people have had in chat. So I'm not sold on Toad Pact for it. You're just getting Area of Effect in exchange for resistances. You take it if you have to. Sanguine Power, really strong here. Sanguine Power is going to give you a lot of life, but then you're going to need to get your recovery somewhere. Recovery is going to be really hard on this. And then I guess you're going to take, where do we go? No, you're forced to go Pandemic, aren't you? So Sanguine Power, Pandemic, Toad Pact, you're taking a lot of damage with that. A lot of self-damage. You do get double curse if you want it, or but your recovery is going to be real tough. I'm trying to think, like, where are you going to get this much recovery? Flat recovery is going to feel bad. 90% fire res is a lot, but so Pox has got to set up for it, but yeah, punishment and fire curse, and potentially even take a curse on the tree and go with flammability, ally weakness, and punishment if you want. So all right, I will trust that Pox will solve everything, but that's going to be tough. You're going to be dealing with a lot of the things that make the build work normally are going to be messy. I feel like spell hit is where I'm leaning towards going if I was going to go with this. Philippe, if you jump through to, I think it was 46 minutes and 50 seconds in, you'll find the Ancestral Commander. It's fine. Burning Arrow of Vigor Ignite Bog Witch is a cool idea. And I want to think on that for a second. How are you propagating kills? I guess, like, you've got one intense ignite, which is saying that you want to simultaneously use Beric's Respite and Traditional Proliferation in order to spread those kills through a pack. You don't really have any tremendously obvious sources of explosions. And like, Oriath's End is an option, but yeah. Nightblood with Runegraft of the Witchmark. I was forgetting that Runegraft existed, so let's bring that one up. Runegraft of the Witchmark. That's the one that grants a minimum set life cost, isn't it? Spells cost plus 8% of life. Spells deal at chaos damage equal to 2% of your maximum life. And in conjunction with Nightblood, which immediately I think of, as soon as you say Nightblood, I immediately think of Brandon Sanderson. So I have to reread that. Spells have a base life cost of 25% of mana cost. Spells you cast yourself have added physical damage equal to 80% of life cost. So these two, like, I don't actually think... I think, like, the Runegraft of the Witchmark is not necessarily playing it the same way. If I was going Nightblood and or Runegraft of the Witchmark, I would want to be using Foulborn the Embalmer, so that you can then, so that you get the pseudo-proliferation of poison, and I would be playing it as a poison build. That's where I think you go. And that feels like you're then going Blade Vortex, because Nightbloods, their costs are crazy. Like, it's 25% of base mana cost. So yeah, okay, that's the thing with the Runegraft. Yeah, lots of messy stuff you could do there. Yukato has a great option to think of there as well. Felfan and Death's Oath. That's another thing. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff here. I think this is one... Let me say with Bog Shaman that Bog Shaman was already very viable, right? It's changing a lot, and it's just got a bunch of cool stuff that you can do with it that you can't do in the normal game. I like that about it. I am not convinced that we've solved any of the right ways to do it. I do believe that Pox will solve the changes that are being made to the Righteous Fire version. I do remember Righteous Fire being playable last time on it, but I think there's probably going to be some weird stuff people come up with as well. So definitely fun stuff there. I don't think the Templar got very many changes, did it? Oh, hang on, we got the Duelist. Okay, so let's start with the Gambler. I want the Gambler to be good. I am not convinced it's quite there yet. I did do some theory crafting of this, and so if we jump into the Gambler, right, the core thing that the Gambler's got going for it is reversed odds. This is a very powerful offensive thing, because you can buff enemy resistances. And whilst reversed odds on its own isn't enough to justify doing that, there are things that make it better than that. So what you'd have with reversed odds is a 50% chance to treat enemy monster element or resistance values as inverted. You get 15% of that from a mastery. It used to be 25% last time Phrecia was available, so it was better back then. But you also have Kilowava's Bluster. So you can get Foulborn Kilowava's Bluster, sorry. You can get 90% of this stat. At that point, you can buff enemies' resistances through the use of Purity Auras and Runegraft of Treachery. This feels like it's a starting point. Essentially, what you're doing is you're playing Rakiata's Dance, but you're not using Rakiata's Dance, you're using something else. The reason I've not considered this something I can solve so far is that Rakiata's Dance takes up both your hands. Unfortunately, though, you're forced to play Kilowava's Bluster, and that's a pretty bad shield. So, Foulborn Kilowava's Bluster. So you're getting some defenses on your shield, but not a tremendous amount. And essentially, I feel like it's hard to justify not just playing a different ascendancy like Paladin and then playing with Rakiata's Dance. So sure, you're not going to have Rakiata's Dance early, but you'll get it eventually. So that was my problem with the Gambler there in terms of my theory crafting on it. In terms of the other changes that I'm making, though, because there's a few things here that are significant. Firstly, plus 12% attack block on the Ascendancy is really nice. This is coming at the expense of some evasion rating, but I think that is generally better. A block chance is something you needed to get if you're going to play this. However, the spell block option is getting worse as a result of this because attack block is a dead stat for that setup. Growing Accumulator. This is going from not good enough to not good enough. So 40% chance to deal triple damage and 30% chance and deal 30% less damage is like, it is something. You're getting 80% more damage at the same time as 30% less. This is 26% more damage. So that is worth almost an Ascendancy notable, this one. And if you were already going towards Spectacular Parlay, then it is something that's reasonable. Spectacular Parlay is pushing you into dealing non-lightning damage, because damage with hits being unlucky is painful if you're dealing lightning damage. If you're dealing non-lightning damage, it's fine. It also means volatility support isn't an option anymore, or alternately, you can use it in conjunction with the Runegraft, but I don't think you want to do that because the Runegraft isn't going to be worth it. There's the Runegraft of being unexcitable, or whatever it is. So essentially, I don't think Spectacular Parlay is very good. Growing Accumulator is better than it was. It's kind of almost good enough. Risk Aversion is now getting straight up buffed. That's 66% now. It's like genuinely quite good. There's nothing wrong with it. Risky Exploit has a nasty drawback to it, but it's fine. And it is actually a net upside. It's just kind of bad to spend 2 points on it. Reverse Dodge is amazing. However, then we have the interesting thing, right? Tails. Chance to block attack damage is lucky. This is crazy, crazy good. It requires you then to deal with spells by some other means, and I would say Suppression is the way to go. Overly Confident has been buffed as well. There is nothing wrong with this cluster. It's solid defensively, but it just pushes you to spread your traditional points out too much. I was not able to solve this. And the other drawback to the Ascendancy that I was looking at, Reverse Dodge makes you want to go and give your enemies Purity of Elements and Purity of Ice, or Purity of Elements and Purity of Fire. However, when you do that, you're also making them immune to ailments. And being immune to ailments from Purity of Elements is actually something that's quite bad. So based on all of that, I have theory crafted with this a little bit over on Twitch, and I'm just not sold on it. Even though heads and tails are better than they used to be, and tails now giving 3% maximum chance to block attack damage is fantastic in conjunction with lucky. Like you can get like 83% lucky without any extreme investment, which means that 97.11% mitigation of attacks against you. That means that you can stand in a pack of melee monsters or range monsters in Delve with some sort of defensive shield on, like whether it be the Surrender, whether it be Aegis Aurora or whatever. You can just sort of stand there and go and get a beer, and you can come back and your character's still at full life. So there's a lot there, but you've got to then invest. You've got to spread out and go and pick up your spell suppression somewhere else. The thoughts that I had, and I will just bring up, I'm going to bring up a trade interface for a sec, just to showcase some of the specific things I found in trade that you might be able to get if the league went long. So, Aerialist. Or let's go with count is 2. Aerialist, one with the shield. And we want, what are the other ones that we had? Let's just start with these two, because I know there were 20 of them when I looked for them. There are two substitutes for Aerialist that are worse. So they have 10% suppression, they have 5, but instead of 5% dexterity, they have something else, right? There are 3 notables that give 10% suppression. So you can find these megalomaniacs. They're not expensive. This one's been listed for a month for 5 chaos. They exist in a trade league. But in the context of a gambler, they become really good. You get your suppression from them. You get a lot of your suppression from them. You get your some attack block chance, but most importantly, 50 life when you block. So you could pick up megalomaniacs like this. You could build a tree that gets a whole bunch of suppression from these cluster jewels instead of the normal sources. And you could have a rounded character defensively, but you're not going to have much damage. Even though you have, even though you're hitting enemies with ridiculously low resistances, the amount of investment that you're making into all these other mechanics that are all in different places on the tree requires you to do all sorts of skill grimmages. So that's my problem with the Gambler. I don't see a way to make it work. The Azadi Crest shield, I think, is a meme on this. I think the Azadi Crest shield is just not what you need. And yeah, Sticky Jim is making a point there that megalomaniacs may be a bit iffy in a 3-week league, although there will be people who do run Simulacrum. There'll definitely be people running it, but it's like you might find they're expensive. If this setup was popular, these are cheap, not because they're common. These are cheap because no one wants them. That's the reason that you can pick these up with 2 perfect nodes for your build and potentially a third one that's okay. Sometimes the third one's okay, sometimes it's not. But you can pick up a bunch of these really cheap. But if there's demand for them, suddenly that goes out the window. And so yeah, that's the Gambler Ascendancy. It's cool. It does a lot of good things, but it wants you to be in too many different places of the classic tree. You might be forced into a position to spend 15 passive points picking up suppression, and that 15 points ends up setting you back in other ways that you can't make work. So that's my thoughts on the Gambler Ascendancy. The Paladin Ascendancy. The Paladin Ascendancy I was expecting may have been nerfed, and it wasn't. This one kind of surprised me a bit. Paladin is champion but better, and with an elemental theme. So, firstly, we have Light of Divinity, Elemental Valiance. These are not changing, right? These are both not changing. And this is partly, this is the good part of the Guardian Ascendancy in the base game. And it's not like the Guardian has nothing else, but this is the reason that pulls people into playing it. 25% chance to trigger summon level 20 summon elemental relic when you or a nearby ally kill an enemy or hit a rare or unique. This thing is way better than it sounds on paper, but it does push you into using fast weapons, and you want to keep that in mind because the Paladin is then something that's got a couple of other points on it that will play into this. Now, we have the changes that are taking place. Anointed Champion is now improving your Constipated Ground, typo intentional. So Constipated Ground around you when stationary, and the effects linger for 4 seconds and are 50% better. So basically you're pretty much always on Consecrated Ground. This is not good enough to be worth 2 points on its own, but and if you you're just not going to take it because there's better choices. You want Elemental Valiance. You definitely want Elemental Valiance there. And then after that, you have Discipline is now level 40 instead of level 30. Don't take Discipline on this. If you take this, take Grace or Determination. Discipline is not worth it. It never was. Level 40 isn't going to change that. There's not much scaling with level. Discipline, I'll bring it up on POEDB quickly in the background. POEDB, I'm just going to check that out now. Discipline, and it is 356 instead of 314. It's the difference is actually trash. Discipline doesn't scale much past 20, honestly, but of the scaling it does past 20, it's all early. It's linear scaling rather than exponential, like most skills are. So yeah, that is not good. Links are a meme. Links were playable in conjunction with mercenaries. You could force links in conjunction with Summon Reaper if you're really or Animate Guardian if you're really masochistic. Depends, I guess, on how much you like lose on it. As long as you're willing to have, Cast on Death Portal, then you can link your Animate Guardian, and it won't feel too bad. But other minions, I don't think you can link temporary ones at all, or not by default anyway. But yeah, I generally speaking wouldn't take that. A bit of heresy from the Lycia Ascendancy has come up as a suggestion in chat, and I want to remind myself of that because it's one I always forget what some of the more obscure nodes do. This was the Consecrated Ground one. It's Profane Ground instead of Consecrated Ground. It inflicts malediction on enemies, and it's not going to get 50% increased effect. Just keep that in mind. So Chaotic Might was... What was Chaotic Might again? That was 30% fizz added as Chaos, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought. So it's pretty strong, but you are losing that 50% that 50% effect of Consecrated Ground you create is not going to be there. And Deep Connection. Oh yeah, Deep Connection has the link skills can target damageable minions. All right, cool. So this is the thing that happens when you go through these one by one. You don't have time before you start the stream to really go through everything. Anyways, changes to Paladin are minimal. Paladin was very, very good in 325 and 326. It was better in 326 because you had mercenaries, and it did have more synergy with mercenaries than most things did. But it was popular in 326, even in the Gauntlet, where mercenaries were an auto skip for everyone, other than a few people. The big things in this ascendancy is all about elemental valiance and field medicine. Magic utility flasks applied to you have 40% increased effect. This is we have Mage Blood at home. Everything else on this is like the non-unique utility flasks you use apply to link targets as a bonus, but 40% increased effect of magic utility flasks. The reason Mage Blood is so broken isn't that it turns on your flasks all the time, it's it gives 70% increased effect on them, because by the time you can afford Mage Blood, you can afford, I think it's 84 on average of the Enkindling Orbs to get a perfect roll, and so that's really strong. So yeah, Field Medicine you take. Elemental Valiance you take, and then Bring the Battle is fine, or if you want defenses, you can take Determination or Grace. Whatever's better for you build. And actually, sometimes you might find that you can't fit the Dexterity for level 20 Grace or level 21 Grace, but you can take level 30 Grace here. Or you take Determination and then you put in a gem slot of a Val Grace if you're in a position where that's useful to you. So lots of things you can choose between, but Bring the Battle is actually really solid. Like, enemies taunted by you take 20% increased damage. That's in the shock layer, so if your enemies aren't shocked, that's 20% more damage. If your enemies are shocked, then that's going to be like going from a 30% shock to a 50% shock, which is sort of like 15 and a bit% more damage. Warcries have infinite power, may or may not matter to you, but there are some very good Warcries. And enemies taunted by you deal 20% less hits and damage against other targets is neither here nor there mostly. So yeah, lots of things there. And Stickbang is pointing out that you can get an extra 95% on Mage Blood is correct, but the 70% is the one that has the real opportunity cost, because you can get that 25% anyway. Like with a non-Mage Blood flask, you can get that 25% as well. But Field Medicine is Field Medicine is giving you a lot of the benefit of the best item in the game, and it also stacks with the best item in the game too. If you get a Mage Blood, you keep using Field Medicine. That's basically the way that this scales so much as well. Paladin is giving you movement speed here. This is Magic Utility Flasks applied to you have 40% increased effect is a movement speed multiplier. It's like really, really strong. Everything here is good, and as long as you are attacking fast enough, or as Grendizer is saying in chat, elemental minions like summon raging spirits, as long as you're attacking really fast, it's really good. Also, your weapon choices are going to change here a bit as well. So where Paradoxic is one of the best weapons in the game normally, you actually want things that are just natively really, really fast. And so there's, like a bunch of cool different shenanigans. Paladin is great. Paladin is getting slight buffs, but they're not very impactful buffs. It's just some of the choices you weren't making are becoming almost good enough to make, but you still don't make them. And next we have the Aristocrat, which is getting massive buffs, which this is the high investment option, right? Like everything we've looked at so far, or most of the ascendancies, have been things that are good, that are roughly equally good at low investment, medium investment, and high investment. Some of them are exceptions, like Blind. The Blind one is better at low investment, and then once you can afford Nimbus, you probably actually re-roll your Blind. What's the name of the Blind Prophet? Blind Prophet. Your Blind Prophet ends up falling behind because Nimbus replaces one of its signature abilities with something else. So at that point, you go, okay, we'll pick something else up. But the Aristocrat is one of those things that requires more of an investment than a lot of the others, and it is actually picking up a lot. So let's go through what we're getting here. Firstly, you are forced on this ascendancy to take 5 passive skill points first. This is a disappointing notable. This is always one that you find is just not that great. But you then have a whole bunch of options that you can take. So you can go with +1 to skill gems, +3 to level of non-exceptional supports on 15 quality on skill gems. So you can take the gem side of things, although you can only take one of these, only gemline cap or centerpiece. Or you can go and you can pick up these things here. What you tend to take, actually, is a whole bunch of these percentage increases because they work so well with Crystallized Omniscience. Crystallized Omniscience is no longer the mythic rare drop from Uber Eater. It is now, I think is it Eater or Exarch? No, it's Exarch. It is no longer the mythic rare drop. It is the regular rare drop. And the Celestial Brace has replaced it as the mythic rare drop. Those two got swapped in 326. And that's a big deal because it means that in Phrecia 2, it'll be more accessible than it was in Phrecia 1. Now, here you have something that mitigates ailments conditionally, but then you have 40% to an attribute now. This thing is big. So you could then, that is basically 40% increased omniscience. If you want to take 3 of these, you can. You might find the third one has a bit of diminishing returns on it, but it's still worth considering. Your alternative is instead to go and pick up +1 to level of all skill gems, which if you're playing an Omniscience spellcaster might be worth doing. So you've got lots of options there. Or you could go with Dreadful Attitude, which is the one that's getting changed to 8% increased damage per 5 of your lowest attribute, which is huge. Also has the increased, the attribute requirements are getting worse, but you'll be fine with that because of the setup. Because of the rest of the ascendancy, you'll be fine with that. So Dreadful Attitude, and that actually, oh, hang on, that doesn't work with Omniscience though. That's a double stacker. A triple stacker. No, that's a triple stacker. That actually makes things quite complex to work out how to do this. So you're only going to be able to take 2 of these. You're going to end up stacking 3 attributes simultaneously, but then you are going to have to only take 2 of these nodes and then pick up Dreadful Attitude, and you'll get a lot of power out of that. So there's a bunch of weird things here that you can do. Dreadful Attitude is very niche. Most people won't want it, but it's cool. And all of this section here is getting buffed. So the actual buffs that are coming are Centerpiece is now +20 quality, which is kind of niche. Like, it's only skill gems, it's not support gems. There are gems that get a lot out of this. Herald of Agony, for instance, gets a lot out of quality, but not enough to be here instead of in the Herald Ascendancy. So just be conscious of whether you're playing a gem that gets a lot out of quality, and if you are, then that's something to remember. Also, Gemline Cap is getting boosted to +4, and this does work on Awaken supports, and a lot of Awaken supports get meaningfully better at gem level 10. So there's a bunch of things that are going on here with this ascendancy, but the main thing is going to be triple stacker Dreadful Attitude is weird but cool, and you can then go with, or you can go with Omniscience and not take Dreadful Attitude because your attributes are terrible, but you then can go, Inherited Fortune, all three of these options, and get a whole bunch of Omniscience out of it. Lots of things that are going on there. Okay, now that's the Aristocrat, and then we have the Templar, which is giving you, like, the Templar's the one that I think was the least popular of the base classes last time, and I don't think this is really changing. I want to try and I'm thinking maybe speed things up a little bit here and only talk about things that are high points from here. Or maybe not. No, let's not do that. Let's go through everything, even though I would like to go and grab something for a very late lunch at some point soon because I am getting hungry. Architect of Chaos is cool. However, cool, good. These are different things. There is a lot of really amazing stuff going on with this ascendancy. It does some fascinating and fun things, but at the same time, it does so probably in the wrong environment. If we were in an environment where lower tier farming was still a thing, like if this was Scourge League, then everyone would be playing Architect of Chaos and playing Vaal Ice Nova. Or if this was Sentinel League, everyone would be playing not actually tier 16 farming, but you'd be doing Blue Sentinels on, like, I think it was tier 9 Glacier, that league. You'd go in, you'd round up a bunch of mobs, you'd pop your Blue Sentinel, you'd drop a Vaal Ice Nova, you'd probably have an instance crash, then you'd come in and you'd loot. So this is a really, really cool setup, and some of the stuff that it does. So let's start with the things that are generic good stuff, but that aren't necessarily there. Impure Blood has skills cost life instead of mana, but it is also getting a change. And what have I done with my... No. Well, let's try and check if I've got that right. Cool. Okay, so Impure Blood was already giving you CB immunity. That was a mistake. Now, Impure Blood giving CB immunity, that actually feels like it's the thing you want on Dissolution. Dissolution is where you need CB immunity. Impure Blood is, it's nice to have it. It makes Impure Blood better than it would be otherwise. It makes a lot of thematic sense that you're immune to Corrupting Blood. Apparently it was already giving you that. I probably would have still used a CB immune duel anyway, because I wouldn't have realized that. Hewn Flesh is terrible, and it's not getting buffed either. Hewn Flesh is like, skills reserving life instead of mana is a tremendous drawback because it, like, so much of your character's defense comes from auras, and this is kind of bricking that. Even though you get 100% life reservation efficiency, that's not enough. There'll be the odd thing that this is good with, like there might be some shenanigans you could play with this in conjunction with what's that name of that wand? Oh, Relic of the Pact. Relic of the Pact might potentially have some shenanigans that you could play with this, but that's basically the only scenario in which I would want to have Hewn Flesh. It's the same problem that Blood Magic on the passive tree has. Like, yes, there are situations where you can use it, but it's such a high opportunity cost to mess up all your reservations that it's hard to justify. Dissolution, generic good stuff. Removes all energy shield is bad stuff, but this causes you to have a better version of Dissolution of Flesh. This is a good effect, but it doesn't come with the life boost that you get on Dissolution. And people who tend to use Dissolution don't use it for the defensive effect. They use it because they're life stackers. Obviously, this doesn't work on a life stacker. But if you are mechanically a very strong player, like this, I think this is a Ben tier node. What I mean by that, Ben being the player who's famous for having the highest mechanical skill in Path of Exile community, he would get a lot out of this because he will immediately adjust his play after taking a big hit, and he'll run out of whatever danger he's in, and he'll just wait that second and then get all of his defenses back. That is not going to be something most people are going to have the mechanical play skill to do, and I don't think I would find this defensively useful. I do think better players than me would. So not even necessarily, don't even need to quite be at Ben's level, but you need to be a strong player for this to be good. And then it can be a powerful defensive layer. It also means that you are absolutely and utterly ruined when you cop a poison, when you cop a bleed, when you cop an ignite, when you cop any of the other damage over time things that follow your character around. So corrupting blood is another one of them. All these are really bad. Damage over time, and also there's a couple others, a couple more obscure ones, like tapping one of the ritual laser beams, I think, applies a lingering damage over time on you from memory. So there's a few things like that that will just be wrecking balls. There's a rogue exile that deals chaos damage projectiles. They'll be wrecking balls as well. So yeah, dissolution, it's good until it's not, and then it's really bad. But it's kind of cool. After this, we have Forbidden Secrets. We'll come back to this. We'll do this one last. Fever for Corruption. Warning, warning, warning. 50% increased Vaal skill effect duration is not as good as it seems. That's because for most skills, this will also increase the soul gain prevention duration. And so I think Vaal skills vary, but I think most of them have the text. Increases and reductions to this skill's duration also increase its Vaal skill cooldown. So let me just find a concrete example of that. Let's go with Vaal Molten Shell. I know this has it. So Vaal Molten Shell has the line of text somewhere in it that is modifiers to skill effect duration also apply to this skill's soul gain prevention. Some of them have this. I think they almost all do. But let's go with Vaal Flame Blast. So this one does not have it. So that's the sort of thing where this is the sort of one that is fine. But if it does have that line of text, it's a really, really crushing drawback. So you've just got to be aware of that. Plan out your skill accordingly. Read your skill, double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, hextuple check. Does it have that scaling? If it has that scaling, then Fever for Corruption probably actually bricks it rather than being really good. And that's a pity because 50% reduced souls per use is really good. Depose Order is the reverse. This actually gives you reduced soul gain prevention duration. And this is for playing a Vaal skill specialist. Like, you definitely want Depose Order and Chaos Reigns on a Vaal skill specialist. You can still use your normal version of the skill, but your goal is going to be to try to get your soul gain prevention as low as you can, well, really quite low, and then just kill as many monsters as you can so that you're mostly using your Vaal skill. Fever for Corruption may or may not fit in that plan depending on the particular skill you're using. Glimpse Chaos is getting buffed. It's generic good stuff, except with a drawback. And I want to be clear with the wording on this, that -4 to all resistances includes Chaos Res. So it has a very real drawback, but it's getting made 25% better than it was. This is solid. This actually is a beneficial node, but whether it's good enough to justify all the opportunity cost is more marginal. Forbidden Secrets, though, is the reason you might consider this. Everlasting Sacrifice is the thing that transforms the way your energy shield works as a defensive layer. You want to have a maximum energy shield that is under 100, but is not 0. Then with Everlasting Sacrifice, the way this thing works is it's complicated. Your energy shield starts at 0, doesn't recover the normal way, but when you do gain energy shield, which you mostly get from gain energy shield on hit with spells, I think is the main way you would do this. Your energy shield becomes a buff counter, and your maximum energy shield is the top. Once you hit the top of that buff counter, then it's all removed, and you gain a 4 second period, I think it is, maybe 4 or 5 seconds. It's a short duration period where you've got +5 to all maximum resistances. So essentially, Everlasting Sacrifice is requiring you to jump through hoops, but it's +5 all maximum resistances. It is powerful, but it's complex and messy. And Shepherd of Souls is the other thing that's in there. Shepherd of Souls is the really solid part of this. This is something you can only get on Yarmax Accord normally. It is 80% less soul cost for Vaal skills, which is tremendous. But for each Vaal skill you've used recently, it's 100% increase. in soul cost. So this has an awkward interaction with Fever for Corruption. So with Fever for Corruption and Forbidden Secret simultaneously spec'd, your soul costs go 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, 90%. But you can, I think it's that. I have to confirm that, but I think that's the way that it works. Essentially, Forbidden Secrets is really strong, but it is going all in on those Vile skills. So that's the sort of general outline there. And all right, chat has just caught up. Chat was broken for a period. Then I'm just catching up with everything that's come up in chat briefly, because everything went really silly overall in the chat. Just trying to get a few things there. Okay, there we go. Sorry about this. If you're watching this after the fact, I'm just rereading all of the things that came up in chat in the last couple of minutes, because everything went silly. Actually, did we even lose the stream for a period there? We had a big drop off in the number of people on the stream for a period. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but it's all gone silly. And yeah, the lisp sound is. I have a very minor one for certain words. I tend to avoid using words that actually rhyme with lisp. So wisp, I try to avoid using the word. That's something that I will just generally try to avoid. You'll notice there's a couple of words I try to avoid, and that's the reason for that one. That's something you can't really do when you're streaming. But if I'm recording a video, I will tend to pick those up. I don't know what happened there with the weirdness on YouTube, but I think we're back. And everything seems to be sorted out. It's just like there was a brief period where it was a brief period there where everything went messy. But yeah, who knows? The YouTube gods have their ways. Now, I too try to avoid wisps in POE 2. Yeah, I mean, there are still 200% more monster rarity is actually real on POE 2. It's like you do notice them feeling better, but they just feel better than a normal rare, but they don't feel as good as 3 normal rares, and they're often harder than 3 normal rares. So yeah. Okay, well anyways, let's get to the changes that are taking place here are pretty minor, and ultimately, this is a cool ascendancy, right? Architect of Chaos, Shepherd of Souls is a cool effect. If I make a second character in this event, it's going to be one of these things, I think. I think that's my plan. It does some cool stuff. Polytheist is next. Polytheist is what happens when you've got lots of good stuff, but not quite enough good stuff to make a cohesive build. There is so much in here that is individually a good node, and so this would be the most powerful bloodline ever if it was a bloodline. There's so many things in here that are solid, but the problem is finding a perfect package of 8 nodes. That said, that actually means that this ascendancy gains quite a lot out of the sort of things that have come up with bloodlines being added to the game. So let's start by having a quick look at the changes that are being made here. Firstly, light radius and defenses are now getting changed around. You are getting less light radius. They have gone and realized either we nerf the life radius on this, or else the light radius stacking wand is going to be busted. And so what they did was they actually buffed the entire ascendancy by quite a lot in order to avoid a specific synergy that was going to be problematic. This is the wand Eclipse Solaris. Eclipse Solaris was previously a dumpster tier unique. It was changed from, I think, tier 4 rarity drop anywhere and garbage to tier 1 rarity drop anywhere and quite good, but it was this package that almost was great, but was never quite perfect. It has a tremendous amount of fire damage, flat fire damage that is based upon the amount your light radius exceeds base value, and it was going to be giving you 50% because you would have taken 5 small nodes. You might even have gone as far as 6 small nodes, honestly, because of the way that scaling works. So it would have given you 60% light radius to take your entire ascendancy in here. Nowadays, it's not going to be that. It's instead going to be you're getting a whole bunch of global defenses, which is actually better for most builds. But for the one build that cared about that light radius, this is a big nerf. Anyways, Disciple of Solaris is getting buffed. It was already good, wasn't it? Disciple of Solaris, or Devout of Solaris is nearby enemies blinded. Oh, this is the 4-pointer though. 100% increased critical strike chance, and enemies blinded by you have, yeah, so it's the one that's, how much is it getting affected there? 10% reduced damage taken. This is not enough because there is so much that is going on elsewhere in the tree that it's hard to justify a 4-pointer here. The reason I say that, Devout of Relikesh, everyone takes this. Devout of Lunaris, everyone takes this. And so, or at least if you're spells. I guess if you're not spells, yeah. If you're not spells, Devout of Lunaris, Devout of Solaris is fine. But Devout of Relikesh is just bonkers. This is like one of the best 2-pointers in the game. And it comes along with other stuff that's pretty solid there. But then you just don't have a full package. That's your problem with Polytheist. Everything is hard to make work together. Who's messaging me? One sec. I'm just checking if someone's messaging me a correction over there. That is not correct. Okay, so spell skills have 30% increased area of effect is being added to Lunaris. Lunaris is already bonkers. So this is spells only, but +2 projectiles is great. That would be a 4-pointer on its own. Nova spells cast at the targeted location instead of around you is great, but also additional area of effect. Like, everything on this is great. Devout of Relikesh is great. The problem is finding a cohesive package with these. You can go into a bloodline and you can take 4 points somewhere else. That is fine, but most of the bloodlines don't have 4 cohesive points in them. That's the reason I don't like Polytheist. That's the reason I think like Polytheist is sort of, there's a bunch of things that are almost there but aren't quite. I like Devout of the Brine King as a 2-pointer, but not as a 4-pointer. Devout of Gruthkul is unplayably bad for most people, especially anything that's using Devout of Lunaris. And Devout of Rizlatha is like not synergistic at all with Devout of Lunaris. So this cluster is meh, if you're wanting to fix anything. And then you've got Devout of Abrath is not there. Devout of Garakan is like, it's really meh. And Devout of Solaris is, again, it's just not worth 4 points. So you can take these 4 points, they're great, but then it's hard to know what else to do. The bloodlines don't quite get you there. Maybe you can find a package that, like with the 2 points in, with 4 points in Lycia, maybe? If you find 4 points in there. Relikesh got buffed, did it? What on earth? Oh, wow, it's got CB immunity as well. You get all sorts of different resistances as well, which are nice. Devout of Abrath may be a bit better now, but unfortunately, Devout of Gruthkul is still bricks that pathway. So yeah, there's a few more things going on. So Devout of if Rizlatha got something, I could see, or if there was some other way to get Brine King, like that wasn't so painful as pathing through Rizlatha, I could see this being fine. As it is, Relikesh plus Lunaris plus 4 points in a bloodline. Just what bloodlines do people think? What unaffected by Ignite can let you skip the body armor for self-ignite prolif? Yes, that is true. Yeah, you can. So the new version of Devout of Abrath is something that allows you to go unaffected by Ignite in conjunction with the Fulcrum. The drawback, of course, here is that there's just not the whole package for it. And so, yeah, I think like you have to assess this as though Gruthkul doesn't exist, which breaks the pathing there, and maybe just is unaffected by. If I was forced to spend 8 points in this ascendancy, I would go Relikesh, Lunaris, Abarath, and Solaris. But I would not be happy with my 3rd and 4th points. Otherwise, yeah, you just got to go 4 points in the same bloodline as each other. Maybe you can do that with Tull or Esh. I feel like the Breachlord bloodline does have rewards for that. So, okay, so if you're forced into here, you can go +2 to the level of all lightning skills if at least 4 Foulborn Uniques are equipped is a high cost, but Tull of the Blizzard, maybe, I think you just go Tull of the Blizzard and Otherworldly Apprentices. I feel like that's how you have to go. So Tull of the Blizzard, some sort of cold spell, or maybe you go Esh of the Storm instead, which is a bit weaker because there's less lightning spell related things. I think there's a setup there. I think there is a setup. So Polytheist, Relicash, Lunaris, Breachlord, one of Esh and Tull, and Breachlord defensive. Why not Garakan instead? Why not Garakan in there as a 2-pointer? Yeah, Garakan does something instead of Abrath. Yeah, Garakan's all right. It's only while moving that it gives you anything much. I mean, you've got the ground immunity. Ground. It's worth noting that ground effects are not going to be as common in Phrecia as you might have thought of. So you could potentially do some Lycia stuff with Chaos Conversion from Fizz-based Shockwave Totem. So then you've got Novas casting at the targeted location instead. Yeah, I could see that. There are a bunch of cool things going on. Like, it's not this ascendancy is feeling like it's got some good stuff. It's just hard to make anything cohesive out of it. The other thing is maybe I think the Feral Bloodline has some just generic good stuff in it as well. Feral's Bloodline. This was the generic good stuff here is Primal Roar, 2% attack speed per minion up to this was, yeah, like you get your Summon Spectral Tigers on crits. That's right. This gives you a bunch of extra crit, which only stacks additively with the power charges you've got, but is still something. And the rest of it's not really that cohesive unless you have the minion things, Spiritual Aid and the attack speed version. If you've got Spiritual Aid and the attack speed version, Primal Roar Hunt Leader might work. As 4 points in Feral alongside the good stuff from Polytheist. So a bunch of silliness there, but that's basically Polytheist. Puppeteer is next. Puppeteer has a drawback that is monumental on one of its most important nodes. There is a reason that the Puppeteer has not been super popular. And let's just go and find our Puppeteer here. The reason for it is that you have a notable, your raised zombies count as corpses on Graveyard Shift, and this blocks a very powerful node that's behind it. What this means is that 99% of the time, this doesn't matter. Then that 1% of the time, a monster pops one of your zombies with a dead, and you go splat. It's not really 1% of the time because there's a map mod that areas contain totems. There's, I think there's a Rogue Exile that uses dead. There's just a bunch of just random things. So a bunch of little things that pop up in all sorts of spaces. Basically, that text is crushingly bad, even though it does lots of good things for you. It just causes you to go splat more often than you think. And that's the bad news on it. So, your minions spread Caustic Ground on death, dealing 40% of their life as chaos damage per second, previously 30%. That's nice. Problem is that you're going to find those minions sometimes blowing you up. Here we have +5 to level of all raised zombie gems, previously 4, and 50% increased raised zombie size, previously 25%. This is good in conjunction with raised zombie of falling, but again, if you're using it with perpetual zombies, you are going to get corpse exploded a lot. Graveyard Shift now has 30% increased maximum damage that you suffer from enemies casting Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction upon you. Rotting Might now causes your zombies to be better than they were. Like, it's so half your strength is added to zombies, and you get 40% increased strength, which is crazy high. That is actually a very live node, but it's like whether it's something that you can make work as an overall package is a bit tougher. Marination now is better than it was. So basically, if you want to play this as a minion build, you just have to forget that Graveyard Shift exists. You need to look at this Flesh Puppets node repeatedly. This one that says +5 to the level of all raised zombie gems, and think, oh my god, that node looks so good, except I can never take it. As long as you're okay with that, then Puppeteer is less bad than it used to be, but I still think it's solidly in the less bad than it used to be cluster. It's not something that I'm jumping at the bit to play. And then after that, we have the Scavenger, and the Scavenger is getting nerfed. Let's finish with a nerf, because nerfs are always fun. Nerfs are like, hey, let's go and take some of those options that were known to be very good and make it so they're no longer known to whether they're any good or not. So they're changing things, but the main things, oops, it's all crangled. Let's try and, oh, sorry about the flashbang there. That was a Cloudflare error. And then I just hit back and it works. So here we have the changes that are coming. Firstly, let's start with the armors. Cloak of Flame. This is the one that was oppressively good. I use the term oppressively good when something is a choice that is so good that everything else feels objectively wrong. And Cloak of Flame was exactly that. It's now getting nerfed. It's still doing what it used to do. It's just doing less of it. It's still very, very good. This is still going to be a live build. All the builds that were previously playing Scavenger with Cloak of Flame equipped, they still work. They're just a little bit less indestructible than they were. So that's something that's worse than it. So that's something that's still fine. In terms of caster weapons, we have Void Battery is getting nerfed hard. I think GGG saw that it was pretty much the only thing people were using. Basically, it's now 15% increased spell damage per power charge instead of 25%. It's still probably so good that it's oppressively good. Well, oppressively good if you're dealing spell damage. If you're not dealing spell damage, Obliteration is still just as good as it used to be. On the attack weapons, there's a number of buffs. Oh, hang on. There's also Midnight Bargain. Midnight Bargain is getting buffed as well, and these buffs are just probably not big enough. SRS up to 5, and one of the 2s is becoming a 3. But someone that's more of a minion expert than me would have to weigh in on whether that's good. I don't think it's there. And then after that, we have the attack weapons. Attack weapons were pretty much unused last time, mostly because the caster ones tended to be better. So, Oro's Sacrifice is getting buffed. Oro's Sacrifice is now gaining 50% chance to ignite. That makes it easier to build around this. It doesn't make the builds that use it any better, but it just makes them easier to build. Like, they're no longer going to want... it's probably... Realistically, this is +3 passive points, which is fine, but it's not something people were singing out about in the past. And given that, like, I'm not pulled into the Scavenger for something as small as +3 passive points. Let's put it that way. Doomfletch is next. This is going from 20% to 25% of weapon physical damage added as extra of each element. This is massively better than it was. And this is sort of, given that this is a 6-pointer in conjunction with the defensive first pointer, it needs to be that good, but it's something that's a real pull. I still don't think it gets there. I still don't think it's going to be good enough overall, but at least it's compelling to consider. Starforge gives increased area of effect, but not enough to matter. And then the other thing that you get in here is the the Scavenged Amulets passives. Oh, hang on. This is where we are again. So these are really crazy good, a lot of these. But you've got to be able to find a package that works for them. So you've got to be able to find something that works in conjunction with everything else you've got. What I really like here that wasn't quite good enough in the past is taking Cloak of Flame because Cloak of Flame is the best, then going down to the bottom and picking up Doomfletch, then coming over to Leadership's Price. Leadership's Price is going to give you Scorching Conflux, Brittle Conflux, Sapping Conflux, as long as you can balance your top 2 attributes, which is a bit difficult sometimes, but is very doable. That's going to be something that you could play around with on a bunch of attack builds. You then need a physical weapon, and you may or may not want to have some sort of conversion. Some sort of conversion on there that would allow you to play with physical. And yeah, a good comment that's come up here from Unkaplutz here is do not play this Ascendancy if you're wanting to use a bloodline. I'm going to go further. Like it's a bloodline means that you can't use any of the jewelry, and the jewelry is like so much of the power of this. Like you've got Fury Valve is crazy good. Duedre's Tongue is terrible. Like honestly, has no place being here. Leadership's Price is crazy good. Death Rush is solid. Adrenaline for 5 seconds on kill is really, really good. And Zerfi's Heart is just amazing on the right build, which is Righteous Fire Scavenger. So all in all, Righteous Fire Scavenger survives this patch notes. It's worse than it was, but it's fine. Other top tier builds, the Blind Prophet builds are meaningfully worse than they were, and I think you outscale Blind Prophet faster than you did last time. Blind Prophet is still fine up to, but not including Nimbus level investment. Other top builds from previous Phrecia, you had Ancestral Commander Slams. You might actually want to go Ancestral Commander Strikes now, but Ancestral Commander Slams is fine. Ancestral Commander Strikes looks like it's viable as well. So lots of stuff to do there. Paladin is looking strong. Paladin outshines the non-Ancestral Commander melee builds. Herald of Agony looks really good. Herald with other Heralds has not convinced me, but I'm open to being proven wrong on that. And what else is there that's and Whisperer mana stacking is fine. Like really, really good. Now, the other thing of note, let's go through the area modifiers, and I'm also just going to hit refresh on this, just in case there's been changes. There have not been changes. Okay, cool. So, in this version of Legacy of Phrecia, each area will have a Cartography Scarab of Risk pre-applied. Maybe not exactly 2 mods. Below you can see all the modifiers that were excluded from the pool of mods. So you can get anything else, but not these. No Reflex. You will not get Shocked or Burning Ground or Chilled Ground, and this is actually for performance reasons rather than anything else. And likewise, Twin Bosses. Twin Bosses make sense because Act Bosses could be like a complete mess. So that's the reason they've done that, is that they don't want to have awful ground in various places. And honestly, it's just going to be smoother in the campaign. Less recovery rate. Less recovery rate is a fine mod when it's not scaled up. But Righteous Fire should be happy about this. The decision to exclude this, because this is a nasty mod for Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire does have to deal with the minus max, but it can deal with that. Minus max is a bit worse than this in my mind. No regen is not going to be there, and neither is Leech Immune, so those are horrible mods. Monster Ailment Avoidance is not present. Now, I am reading this to be all of the Monster Ailment Avoidance. So there is a Bleed/Poison Ailment Avoidance mod that's only at 50%. It's not that bad. You can overpower it just by hitting more. And then there is the Elemental Ailment Avoidance, which is 70%, which is absolutely splattering. Aura Effect is not present, and neither is less AoE. And reduced blast charges gained, less evasion, which is also player suppression is nerfed, less armor and block is nerfed, and buffs. There's actually not that many of these, are there? There are not that many of these map mods. I believe they're going to choose a different mod, just to answer that question there. So Mazgul's asking about that in chat. And Caposen has a question about how does double Katava work in maps. There is a tag that certain maps have that is called cannot_be_twinned. This one's been data mined. It's present on Vaal Temple. It's present on both the Katava maps. It's present on a couple of other maps as well. Surprisingly, perhaps it is not present on the what do you call that map boss? Act 9 boss, Depraved Trinity, what's it called? Core map. Carcass map, sorry. It is not present on that. But yeah, basically doesn't come up there. So the Ailment Avoidance, I think the Ailment Avoidance, the numbers are just too high on those mods, and Grinding Gear Games should just change them. Instead of being 70% and 50%, they should just be 35%, and then they are never bricking. They're always really high impact if that comes up. And yes, some advanced builds, Agenta is pointing out in chat there that reduced CDR is not on this list. And so there are a couple of builds that will cause problems with, and monsters are immune to stun. There's that hybrid mod that is monsters have higher life and are immune to stun. The fact that so many modifiers are obscured here means that generically more powerful monsters will be more common. So monsters having more life will be more common. Monsters having heightened resistances will be very common. And monsters having charges will be very common. So keep that in mind when you're building. Just expect monsters to feel higher status than they are. I don't think you can reroll instances. I think the way that this will work, and you have to check this. It's one of the testing game once we get there. But I think what they've normally done is made it so that every player experiences the same mod for the same 15-minute period. With maps, you can give up on. You can abandon a map if you get a mod that you're not feeling strong enough to beat. You can abandon it. But if it's a campaign zone, then I think you can't. I don't think you can re-roll them. Or you can wait until the next time period. However, I could very well be wrong on that. I'm assuming that they do what they've done in the past, which they may not do. They may decide to change things. So yeah, that's the area modifiers, which is. I think the key things here, minus max is present, plus unconditional damage is present, which we're kind of expecting it would be. But those are they're some of the most dangerous of the mods that are present. And it appears like, well, nothing has been clarified as to what happens with tier 16, originator influence maps and tier 17 maps. I do not know from what's been provided here with this information from Grinding Your Games. I do not know whether my tier 16.5 map that does not have volatile cores on it, whether I can get in there and there actually are volatile cores because it's an extra random mod and it's pulled from the 16.5 pool rather than from the tier 12 pool. So I don't know what's going to happen there. How does Righteous Fire deal with the minus max res one? Just out heal it. You're squishier, but you out heal it. And yes, you can just not turn on Righteous Fire. Yeah, you can just turn off Righteous Fire. Or, well, sorry, you can't actually turn off Righteous Fire. You can degen down to 1, and then Righteous Fire will fall off. And then at that point, you can just not turn it back on, and you can become a Fire Trapper. I think there will be idle changes. In fact, we know there's going to be idle changes. I just don't know they're going to announce them. We know that the Rogue Exile mod that broke the economy of original Phrecia is gone. That was gone before the 326 versions of Phrecia. What we don't know is what's going to happen with the idle mods for Settlers content. We know they're going to exist. We don't know what they're going to be. We also don't know if they're doing balance pass on them. And yes, Sticky Jamaid is correct. You can turn off Righteous Fire with a flask of dousing or equivalent. So, yeah, the Rogue Exile mod has already been fixed. There is a mod in the game that is a spiritual successor to it, but it no longer has quadratic scaling. So it used to be that the first one of those idols that you got was worth X Rogue Exiles. The second one was worth an additional 3x. The next one was 5x, and the fourth one was 7x. And that was the maximum you could get. So they scaled 1, then 4, then 9, then 16. They now scale 2, 4, 6, 8. So the first one is better. The second one is equivalent to having 2. The third one is worse. The fourth one is much worse. And anyways, I think in terms of... Let's just go through with one final quick thought as to what we think on everything. Daughter of Oshabi is picking up some cool things. It's better than it was. And it was already playable, but it wasn't very popular, and it's now going to be better than it was. Whisperer is surprisingly better than it was, and I'm really did not expect that. I was expecting this to get gutted hard. It has not been gutted hard. Whisperer is probably one of the power gamer choices. If you're the sort of person that's going to sink 3,000 divines into a character, Whisperer is probably going to be the best of them. May not be so great at a lower level, and it may be hard to get Indigon if you want to use that. Wildspeaker, getting better, but not by very much. Antiquarian, the buffs that this is getting are to the wrong things. It's except for the adrenaline thing. Basically, it's not really any better than it was, but it was already fine, so that's okay. It picks up a little bit from the ability to spec into Oroth, spec into Oroth Bloodline and just take the 3 good points on it. Behemoth is changed. Its old builds are dead, but new builds will rise from the ashes and they'll be better than the old ones were. The ability to use Heralds is huge, and there's just so much of an improvement being able to use Blood Rage and stuff like that. Ancestral Commander is worse than it was, but still fine. Definitely play this if you want to play it. It's a hybrid of the Juggernaut and it's sort of in the Juggernaut champion type level of power. Very, very solid. Maybe even better than those. Sort of pushing towards Slayer level, but it's not best ascendancy in the game level anymore. Surfcaster is roughly where it was. These changes are mostly nothing because they're roughly balanced out. Ghost of the Deep is worse than it was. If you are just using Ghost of the Deep to level, then it's worse than it used to be, and you should just level as a Servant of Arakaali if you want the ridiculous leveling power that is having a low-level Envy. Blind Prophet is worse than it was, but still fine. Surfcaster is fine at endgame. Servant of Arakaali still probably disappoints at endgame, but if you want to play Spiders in the Tub, you can. Harbinger, the swapping around of things is a mess, and honestly, I'm very not sold in the Ascendancy, but there are some combinations that it does well. Herald didn't get nerfed. In fact, it got buffed. I'm surprised by that. Herald really good. Bog Shaman, lots of buffs there. Was already good. Got buffed further. Looking fantastic. Very tricky Ascendancy to build. This is the sort of thing that I think is the biggest new player trap. Not in the sense that they'll build an unfixable build, but they'll build a character that is an incohesive mess that needs respecking. But it's the sort of thing you can respec around. Gambler is getting better, but not quite by enough, and it wants you to spread your classic passive tree points into too many places. Gambler, more than anything else, needs some way to pick up, to bounce around the tree, to avoid skill grimmages, because you keep wanting to have attack block, you want spell suppression, you want elemental damage with attacks, and you want aura effect, all in the same build, as well as having life. You can't get it all. You need all these pieces to have a cohesive build. I am not convinced that I can make the Gambler work. And I like what it's doing. I really like the ability to scale up to 90% elemental inversion and have basically Rakiata's Dance, but also have that with capped lucky block for attacks. That is a very defensively strong Ascendancy setup, but not a lot of power offensively at all. And I can't make all the pieces fit. That's the problem with it. Paladin was good, isn't changing much. Like the parts of it that are changing don't matter. It was good, it's still good. Aristocrat, very, very messy, complex, but powerful setup available for tri-stacking. Tri-stacking on it looks really good, but that is not going to be cheap. Or you can go with single attribute stacking and do some cool stuff with that. Or more likely, you can go with Crystallized Omniscience. Crystallized Omniscience is much more available than it was in the past. Templar Architect of Chaos. Fun, middling power level, but fun. Polytheist really gains a lot from if you can find the right bloodline to spend 4 points in, and then take +2 projectiles for spells and the 2-pointer leading up to that gives you charges. That's really strong. Your 6th point is going to be terrible if you spend it in this Ascendancy. That's the problem with Polytheist. Your first 4 are amazing, your 5th and 6th are terrible, and your 7th and 8th aren't much better. Alternately, you could do something really meme level and just go, if 4 small nodes, 4 small nodes is too much. You go 2 small nodes and then a 2-point Ascendance, a 2-point bloodline maybe. But I feel like you go Tull and Breachlord defenses. That's probably where you go. And yeah, Polytheist light stacking is possible. It's not as good as it would have been otherwise, but there is something in the base game. Isn't there something in the base game that gives 50% light radius? Or was that a Phrecia Ascendancy as well? There is something that gives a lot of light radius on an Ascendancy notable. I can't remember what it was, but and Polytheist has Fulcrum applications. That is a good point as well. There's a lot of cool stuff there. There's a lot of things you can do. Puppeteer is funny. Puppeteer is all fun and games until someone corpse explodes one of your zombies, and then it's hilarious. And Scavenger is nerfed, but still fine. Still play it if you want to use it. And I think that's my thoughts as to where we are at the moment. I might just take any questions people have got quickly in the next couple of minutes. And then after that, I will probably be ending the stream on this scorching hot Melbourne day where it was getting a whole bunch of notifications in Windows saying, hey, are you aware that there's a high fire danger rating in your area? And hey, 39 degrees Celsius at home at the moment, which is, I think, the hottest we've had, but is also 2 degrees below what the forecast was going to be. So let's see if anything else comes up in chat. Puppeteer enables dual-wielding Montragals. Yep, there's a bunch of cool stuff. I think people will find stuff in the Puppeteer. How is light stacking a tech? Paradox G is asking that. I should probably bring up the item for light radius stacking because just have a look at this item. This was buffed in... This was reworked in 327. Warning, warning, warning. This item is tier 1 rarity. So this item is probably 2.5 the rarity of Aegis Aurora. 2.5 as in, for every 2 of this item that drops, 5 Aegis Auroras drop, 5 Unnatural Instincts drop. That sort of level. So, ideas for League Start Slammers. You can still play Ancestral Commander if you want, but it has changed a bunch. The Warcry tech in there has changed a bit. The Slam package, I think, just kind of works on like you could make that work pretty much anywhere, and it's most of your power comes from the southwest of the tree. You just don't have access to the Berserker nodes. That's the problem. Camp 5033 is mentioning the possibility of using Runegraft of Stability in conjunction with the Gambler. So then you end up with a hybrid of Lucky and Unlucky block. Then you can do that, and that is better than you would get normally. The reason I didn't push hard into that theory crafting wise is that you still have that problem of having to spread your points too thin. You've got to then invest in getting your spell block, unless you're thinking of going... So option 1 is you don't go... what's that node called that... I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's near Tree South. That's Versatile Combatant. Versatile Combatant is -10 to your attack block and spell block caps. You can take that, and then the investment you put into attack block will cap you out on spell block. And then you've got your Runegraft of Stability. Now, 65%, it'll be a bit more than 65%. So let's say it's 67%. Your Unexciting, which is Lucky and Unlucky at the same time, except they actually work. You'll be Unexciting on both. I'm just going to bring up a calculator in the background because I want to do this without flashbanging you all. So binomial distribution calculator. Let's say you are 67%. So success on a trial is 0.67. Number of trials is 3. Number of successes required is 2. And your probability of 67%, that only brings you up to 75%. So 67% unexciting is not much better. It's the further from 50% you are, the better being unexciting is. Or not necessarily better, but the more extreme the effect of being unexciting is. And okay, so let's go through all the other things here. Dustin's mentioning the option, yeah. Is Flicker Strike still viable with Wildspeaker? Nightbro, I don't think anything has changed there. I've never played Flicker Strike, so I'm not really the right person to give you an authoritative answer on that. I think the answer is it's not changed, but just verify that. Let someone else verify that. How does Scavenger Energy Blade look? Oh, Scavenger Energy Blade. I don't see that much energy shield coming from the Ascendancy. I don't see how to make that work off the top of my head. I could be missing something. I could be missing one of the niche nodes in there. Anyway, know a way to see the builds from the last Phrecia on POE Ninja? Yes, that has recently been added. So you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it a couple of days ago, but you can now. So if you go to builds and then I'm just opening it myself in the background, league, you will see Phrecia in the past leagues. So let me just jump over there. You will see Phrecia in there. It was not there until recently. So if you didn't see that recently, that's why. What would I say is the build for Speedy Blasters? Blind Prophet still, maybe? Like, Blind Prophet's still got its +2 projectiles early. It's still got its Nimbus effect early. And yeah, so it's still like... It's still got the things that made it good. It's just worse at them. And yeah, start out as Servant of Arakaali, definitely, if you're wanting to get that going. So, all right, let's talk about the maths of unexciting, because people have raised this. Unexciting reads that the rune graph. Let's bring up the rune graph first. Rune graph of stability, because a lot of people get this one wrong. Of stability. So your lucky or unlucky effects are instead unexciting. This is not the same as not changed. This is take the middle result from 3. What this does in practice is it pushes you away from, it pushes you towards the edges, so away from 50%. It's neither a buff nor a nerf overall. If you're under 50%, it makes how much under 50% you are more extreme, and so therefore it's a nerf. If you're over 50%, it's a buff. The closer you are to the endpoints, the better. I'd need to run a graph on it to get the exact details. Maybe I'll do that quickly. And I do have Excel open, don't I? Yeah, cool. I won't show screen on that because oops, I just close that, save that, make a new one. And then let's go 0, 0.1, 0.2, and then hopefully Excel's usually smart enough to pick up that there's a formula there, and I did actually get it right. Okay, so let's go with what we need here is unexciting. It is going to be, your probability is going to be that to the power 3 equals that to the power 3 plus that to the power 2 times 3 times 1 minus that. That should be right. Okay, so let's just make sure I get that right first, then I'll share it with you all. It's not a very substantial change in general. So let's add in a couple extra decimal places to it, and that's it. Hang on, I'm going to do it that way, do I? Number? Yep. Oh, hang on, no, that's actually not needed. Okay, I think that's right. So let's just get that, confirm that for myself. It's, all right, here's what the numbers look like. If warning, minor flashbang, minor flashbang, minor flashbang, warning, minor flashbang. Okay, so that's what unexciting looks like. You'll notice there that it's most impactful when you are more extreme than a third without it. Oh, the wiki has the graph, does it? Okay. Now, the funny thing is that everyone always posts that, but there's a 15-second delay. So anyway, everyone gets to see that. Felborn Kikazaru is an excellent point from Kaposin as well. Whisperer. Felborn Kikazaru is amazing. Like, it's one of those really cheap, really powerful items. And yeah, so basically, a good question that's been asked by SEO 1995, which is, does the Labyrinth have the effects of zone effects, either like the Cartography Scarab? I don't know. I don't know on that one. That's an interesting question, and it's one I guess we'll find out the answer to soon. But I think at this point, we've pretty much gone through everything. It's been a good little discussion there. I'm going to leave it at this point. I'm going to go and move out of the room I'm in into an air-conditioned one. But thank you all. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and or at least, let's be more ominous than that. May you have the Varlorb results that you all deserve. Catch you around, have fun, see you in Phrecia.